Part 55. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 563. Divine Descent. After consuming 20 script points and part of the sacrifices, guidance money, ghost money, etc., to activate it, you can carry out a divine descending ceremony and summon the ghosts and spirits of the underworld, all kinds of kings and little ghosts, through paper figures. Note, to summon a specific god, a specific token is required. If there is no specific token, it will be randomly summoned based on the sacrifice. Duration, starting from 10 minutes, it depends on the quality of the paper man and the mood of the spirit. Cooling time, 2 hours. The divine descending technique is originally a technique for summoning the evil ghost Yin Cao. But this is not the East, but the West. Su Tong does have the tokens of the 7th and 8th masters, but the problem is that he has no money. If you want to summon yin gods of the level of 7th master and 8th master to come in person, you will need at least 10 netherworld banknotes. Where can you get so many netherworld banknotes? Since he couldn't summon the 7th and 8th masters, Su Tong simply acted randomly. When the divine descent technique was activated, all the script points in Su Tong's hand evaporated instantly, leaving only a pitiful 12 script points, which was not even enough to release an active skill. Along with the weird whispers, a bad feeling emerged in everyone's mind. Kick 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 kick. Weird laughter echoed around the corridor. I saw that the surrounding walls were decaying at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chin, who was treating Dorsey's wounds, was suddenly surprised by the evil aura. She turned around and looked at the corridor behind her. I saw that the relief on the wall began to twist. The original outer paper shell was wrapped in black dirt and gradually transformed into black flesh. The faces of some statues also cracked, and sharp thorns appeared on the originally holy faces, and even their faces became ferocious for a while. At this time, a demon's eyeballs swiveled around in a circle, suddenly swept to the side, and his 2 scarlet eyes were immediately locked on Dorsey and the others. Run! Seeing this, Chin's expression changed drastically, and she hurriedly pulled Dorsey to stand up, ready to jump out of the window, but when they saw the scene outside the window, they were stunned. The sky was already gray, and the surrounding area of the church was completely reduced to ruins. Apparently he was pulled into the other world. If it were just a low-level demon, it would definitely not have such an ability, but at this moment, the demons in the church were resurrecting one after another. The huge demonic aura instantly pulled their entire church into the depths of the other world. He is indeed a devil. Su Tong looked at the demon gradually fleshing out on the wall and couldn't help but think deeply. It seems that the summoned object of the divine descending technique has a lot to do with the place where it is, unless there is a token as a signpost. Just these low-level demons. Untu had a cold face, Anman's death had made him completely angry. I let this kid off again and again, but he actually dared to kill Anman. As he spoke, Untu's body flashed with holy light, and 12 weapons composed of holy light appeared around Untu. Anman's death has nothing to do with me. I just placed her in the attic. It was you who pushed me to this point. Su Tong said coldly. Nonsense, if you were willing to surrender early and hand Amon over to us, she wouldn't have died, Zhao San roared angrily. Surrender? I surrender, can you let me go? Su Tong's eyes showed sarcasm. His promotion mission has pushed him step by step into a dead end. If he surrenders, then the mission fails. The most likely result is that unto the next task they received was to cut off their own heads. Just when Su Tong was still about to say something, a cold feeling suddenly appeared on his back. He almost instinctively ducked to the side, only to see a huge hook knife slashing hard at the position where he had just been. Su Tong turned around in surprise and saw the demon jumping down from the wall, staring at him with red eyes. Seeing that he had dodged the knife, he immediately let out a low roar and rushed towards Su Tong. What happened? Su Tong was shocked but had no time to think about it. He raised his hands in the air and used the bear trick. He bent his legs and arched his knees, followed by his shoulders, and slammed into the devil's arms. The clever angle combined with the great strength instead, the body of the demon that rushed towards him paused in mid-air for a moment. Even if he only has 12 script points left in his hand, even if he doesn't use active skills, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have backhand power. On the contrary, with the bonus of dark physique, his own physical quality, and the 40% temporary physique bonus brought by Mrs. Anman's death, Su Tong immediately grabbed the demon with both arms and swept his legs with one kick. Sweeping it to the ground, before the guy could get up, he kicked its head off. It was also at this time that the belated prompt reached his ears. You used the divine descending technique. Because the demon did not receive a satisfactory sacrifice, you will lose control of the demon. Not satisfied with the sacrifice, Su Tong was stunned for a moment. At this time, Zhao San stood up holding his chest. Seeing these resurrected statues, he started to attack indiscriminately, and he burst into laughter. Idiot, this is the West. They don't know what your guide money is about. They are just waiting for the backlash, ha 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 ha. Looking at Zhao San, who was laughing, Su Tong tilted his head and looked at him. Instead of being angry, the smile on his face made people feel weirder. Fool, isn't this better? The frivolous tone was more like flirting. After saying that, Su Tong rushed straight to the corridor, and at the same time he had an extra item in his hand. It was a doll with a round face, 2 buttons for eyes, and pink hair. It looked like a junk craft from a flea market. However, as Su Tong injected the last 10 points of the script into the doll suddenly trembled, and then the doll's mouth opened and it let out a harsh scream. What are you worried about? You have a golden nose, a toad's mouth, tiger eyes, and pig's legs. I'll give you a blank look and I'll your mother's mouth. When you open your mouth, the taste of authentic northeastern swearing comes. Despite Su Tong's good temper, he was scolded so suddenly that he had the idea of tearing his mouth apart. I saw him put the doll away from his waist and ran away. Chase, don't let it run away. Untu snorted coldly, and the 3 of them immediately chased after him. Even if Su Tong despicably took advantage of the rules, there were plenty of ways to catch him if they didn't take action. It's nothing more than a waste of time. Suddenly, the harsh curses echoed throughout the church. Although the doll spoke a classic Chinese curse, the voice could be automatically translated in the devil's mind. Even Zhao San, Untu, and Tommy, who were following Su Tong, were stunned by the swearing and swearing, wondering where did they find this country shrew. This doll was the prop card that Su Tong bought from the exhibition at a cost of 50 script points to mock the doll. Taunting doll. Active skill 1, what are you looking at? After consuming 10 script points after activation, the doll will center on itself and emit taunting sound waves, causing surrounding enemies to unknowingly attract attention to itself. Note, if this had been left in the hands of northern gentlemen, they would have dismantled it long ago. Su Tong originally bought this thing just because it was fun, but he never had a suitable opportunity to use it. Now he finally used it. Sure enough, it smells delicious. These demons were originally dissatisfied with Su Tong's sacrifice. He was planning to eat a few living people to defeat the fire when he woke up, but as soon as he opened his eyes, he was pointed at his head and greeted from his mother to his grandmother. It's like you were sleeping soundly, and suddenly the square dance downstairs woke you up. Before you could get angry, as soon as you opened the window, someone threw a piece of shit in your face. Who can resist this? Roar. For a moment, demons ran rampant wherever Su Tong passed by, chasing after Su Tong with red eyes. The scene is like someone snatching the bone from the wild dog's mouth. Without the script points, Su Tong couldn't even use the leopard soul cloak to increase his movement speed. Fortunately, he has a very strong physique and can run at a speed that even a track and field champion can't match. But as the number of demons chasing him increased, Su Tong gradually became passive. Boom. 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 More than 10 black beams of light were spat out from the demon's mouth. Su Tong relied on his dexterity to avoid it, but the speed also slowed down. At the same time, various weird curses began to crazily apply to Su Tong, but Su Tong did not fight back, but avoided the vital points as much as possible, while attracting more demons. This guy is crazy. Untu couldn't help but complain when he saw this scene. He didn't know what kind of madness this guy had. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Tong was hit by a black beam of light, and he flew away immediately. Zhao San and Untu's expressions changed slightly at the same time, and they found that they also had new wounds on their bodies. Zhao San's pupils suddenly tightened. No, hurry up, kick him out of the team. After Untu listened to Zhao San's words, he instantly understood what this guy wanted to do. After all, he had already seen the effect of that prop card just now. But now that Su Tong was about to be kicked out of the team, Untu hesitated. The team is a double-edged sword and more of a contract. When you don't intend to abide by the contract rules, script space will help you fulfill it. If he wants to forcibly kick Su Tong out of the team, it means that he must bear huge compensation. Don't forget, just before, in order to prevent Su Tong from killing Anman, they also used their privileges to make it more difficult for Su Tong to apply for withdrawal from the group, so the same is true. After thinking about it, Untu's eyes turned cold and he said coldly, I don't believe that with so many demons besieging him, he can survive better than us. But Zhao San frowned and saw that Untu refused to kick Su Tong out of the team. When he was about to say something, a group of black stone shadow demons quietly appeared in their sight. Don't look into their eyes, Tommy quickly reminded him, but it was too late. Zhao San just glanced at it, and the reflections of these demons were already reflected in his pupils. Then these demons teleported in front of Zhao San, and their sharp claws clawed straight at Zhao San's door. Fortunately, Zhao San dodged quickly, otherwise he would have been disfigured by the slap. Order Holy Spear Formation. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The golden spears blasted these demons into pieces like a heavy rain in an instant. 12 weapons were suspended behind Untu, making him like the incarnation of a true god. He could command a weapon to burst out with terrifying power by raising his hand. However, although the individual strength of these low-level demons is not high, once their numbers increase, they are almost endless. Damn, that's a lot. Tommy didn't know what was going on, but when he saw so many demons coming up, he couldn't help but frown. As soon as he touched his waist, several bottles of holy water were thrown into the air. As a bullet was fired from the barrel of the gun, the glass bottle containing the holy water exploded instantly, and the holy water fell on these demons like rain. Zitsiza. The demons stained with the holy water immediately began to scream, and the holy water stained their skin, more like a bottle of sulfuric acid was poured on them. It emits a sizzling sound and acrid white smoke. I saw the gun in Tommy's hand spraying out dazzling sparks, and a bullet shattered a demon's head. These demons are not a threat at all. No matter Untu, Zhao San, Tommy, or even Art who caught up, they had no pressure at all to deal with these low-level demons. The only trouble was the quantity. At this moment, a burst of wild laughter suddenly came. I saw Su Tong running over with a crazy smile on his face. Ha 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 ha, Captain, I'm here. Come and save me. The corner of Untu's mouth twitched a few times. At this moment, he wanted to summon the holy weapon behind him and give this guy 1,000 cuts. As soon as Su Tong rushed over with his front legs, a dark shadow from behind pounced on Su Tong. In an instant, Su Tong had more than a dozen scars on his body. What's even more nerve-wracking is that this guy doesn't know how many demons he has attracted, and more black shadows are seen rushing out from the porch behind him. You, uncle. You madman. Seeing Su Tong attracting more and more things, Zhao San couldn't help but curse. The damage these demons can do to them is actually limited, but they can't stop Su Tong from sharing the damage with them like crazy. I saw a steady stream of strange curses and dark power falling on Su Tong. Although Su Tong was beaten badly, he was still alive and kicking, which did not affect his actions at all. Because these injuries were first divided into three, 2/3 of the injuries were transferred to Zhao San and Untu respectively. The remaining 1/3 of the damage is weakened by the title skill killing chapter. In addition to the 40% increase in overall physical fitness brought about by MRS-Enman's death, and the dark constitution, the damage is almost negligible, or even negligible. Untu and Zhao Sang were not so lucky. They did not have a dark physique. Even if Untu, as a holy light type, could offset some of the evil damage, he could not withstand the attacks of so many demons. While the two of them had to fend off the attacking evil spirits, they also had to silently endure the injuries that were constantly being transferred to themselves, and they complained for a while. Grass. Untu finally couldn't bear it anymore. If he was dragged on like this, he and Zhao San would be finished before Li Bo died. So Untu gritted his teeth and decided to remove Su Tong from the team. Because you have increased the amount of compensation for leaving the team, now you have to forcibly remove team members and have to pay 6860 script points as liquidated damages. Do you want to implement it? Following the cold reminder, Untu hesitated. They felt like they were shooting themselves in the foot. Originally, they thought that the reason why Li Bo did not kill MRS-Enman was because he wanted to use torture to extract the prop cards and script points from MRS-Enman's prop book. Or use MRS-Aman as a bargaining chip to blackmail. Therefore, in order to prevent Su Tong from forcibly quitting the team, Untu used its privileges to change the price of Su Tong's withdrawal from the team. Prevent this guy from jumping over the wall. The result was good now. Su Tong didn't jump over the wall in a hurry, while Untu and Zhao San were already anxious. In view of the principle of equivalent exchange, the price for Su Tong's withdrawal from the team was high, but if Su Tong is to be kicked out forcibly, Untu, as the captain, will also have to pay a higher price. 6860 script points, a windfall of almost 7,000 script points. Even a certified player would feel painful if he had to spend such a large amount of money at once. What's more, in order to deal with the sudden arrival of Hecate, Untu had to activate a one-time item, the Holy Sword. The price is to directly deduct half of his script points. Now he doesn't have many script points in his hand. If he takes out this money, Untu looked at his savings of just over 10,000, and for a moment he wanted to slap himself twice. Hurry up, I can't hold it anymore. At this time, Zhao San's scolding came from the side, and Zhao San's shoulder Kinkai Long Sui was already covered with scars, and as he spoke, there was another cut on his body. It turned out that Su Tong couldn't dodge, and the flesh on his chest was torn open by a demon's sharp claws. This injury should have directly disemboweled Su Tong, but after 2/3 of it was transferred, it was just torn open. A shallow cut was made. Su Tong even wiped it with his hand, and with the powerful recovery power of his dark constitution, the wound healed in an instant. But when such an injury occurred to Zhao San, it was naturally a different scene. He saw that his chest was instantly soaked with a large amount of blood, forcing Zhao San to immediately take out a prop potion and sprinkle it on his wound. But this was just a drop in the bucket, as the mocking doll on Su Tong's head kept making vicious curses. Even though Untu and Zhao San quickly joined the battle and wanted to help him share the pressure, they couldn't hold back their hatred at all. There are few things more annoying than this mocking doll. Just like in the group book, a fire spell sneaks in, and he uses pyrotechnics on the boss at every turn. You son of a bitch. Seeing this, Untu knew that he really couldn't delay it any longer. He could see clearly that although Su Tong had been beaten, he avoided the vital points every time. Coupled with this guy's immunity to the power of darkness and his strong recovery power, if it continues, they will be the ones who die. Immediately, his heart went crazy, he cursed Su Tong fiercely, and decisively chose to kick Su Tong out of the team. You have been forcibly removed from the team by Captain William. Because you were forcibly removed from the team, as compensation, Captain William will pay you 6860 script points and you will receive a 3-minute protection time. During the protection period, members of William's team will not be able to cause any substantial harm to you. Hearing the prompt that he had been waiting for a long time, Su Tong raised his eyelids slightly, turned his head and looked at William himself, whose nose was almost crooked with anger, and couldn't help but give a thumbs up silently. 6860 script points. Such a huge windfall, instantly made up for the embarrassing situation of having 0 script points. With such sufficient script points, Su Tong immediately changed his decadent and passive attitude, and the sword energy was stimulated with the 10-finger sword. Even though there were no sword moves, just with the criss-crossing sword energy, the demon that rushed forward in front of him was cut into pieces in an instant. However, Su Tong did not choose to escape immediately. Instead, he quickly turned back and headed straight for court death. Seeing that Su Tong dared to take the initiative to meet him, felt happy and angry. What he was happy about was that Su Tong did not run away immediately, which undoubtedly left him with a lot of time. What makes Su Tong angry is that he overestimates his own capabilities. The reason why he and Zhao San were injured was entirely because this kid took advantage of the loopholes in the rules. In terms of strength alone, had many ways to kill this kid. Do you really think those 3 minutes are very long? Sneered in his heart. In 3 minutes, he and Zhao San could not do any substantial damage to him, but if he wanted to defend with all his heart, this kid would have no way to do anything to him. Antu's idea is right. But he still underestimated Su Tong's determination. Ever since the old Tao pointed out the key, Su Tong understood that his current situation was on the edge of the abyss. At this time, if you continue to drag your feet, you will be courting death. So he wanted to cut through the mess quickly. Su Tong was seen rushing towards Antu with a single step. When he raised his hand, the space in front of him blurred instantly, and hundreds of sword energy poured down like a rainstorm of pear blossoms. If he has money, he won't care about the consumption of script points, since they are not hard-earned anyway. Sanction 12 Guardian Shields. Antu did not dodge. If you want to fight, then fight, but you are destined to be desperate. 12 golden shields appeared in front of Antu. The shields were stacked on top of each other to form a huge light shield. The dense sword energy was splashed on it, making the light shield make a clang 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 sound. No harm done. Just when Antu was about to laugh at this guy for not overestimating his abilities, suddenly a strong uneasiness emerged in my heart. Su Tong opened his palms, pressed his body tightly against the light shield, and grinned at Antu. "Captain, you have no money." This nonsense sentence made Antu stunned, and then he sneered, "Even if there is no script, I will crush you to death just like crushing an ant to death." As he spoke, Antu saw 12 holy weapons spinning around behind him. Next, he only had to wait for Su Tong's protection time to expire. Antu promised to send this guy to hell in an instant. Su Tong was waiting for his words. "That's good." After Su Tong said that, a flash of vermilion red mahogany door suddenly appeared behind him, and at the same time a black energy surged out, ignoring the sacred shield in front of him, and directly enveloped Antu's body. "What's this?" Black energy suddenly enveloped his whole body, catching Antu off guard. His holy light shield was a very rare superposition skill of sacred skills. The 12 holy light shields stacked together create a defensive force that is enough to withstand all damage. But what's going on with the black energy on his body? When I was confused, I heard a prompt from the prop book. "Kevin, the name of this world, has launched a title skill on you, a rich family's wine and meat. Financial resources are being determined. Your script score is 3631, and the opponent's script score is 6,370. You are judged to be a loser. Based on the disparity in financial resources between the two parties, 51% of all attributes will be deducted from you. The taunting doll comes from Chapter 8 of Volume 6, and the rich family's wine and meat comes from Chapter 1 of Volume 7. After using it, both parties will make a financial judgment, and the loser will deduct all the corresponding attributes of himself in proportion. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Xiao. Chapter 564. Zuman Wine and Meat. This title is very strange. After activating this title, you can choose a player for financial PK to compete for the number of script points. The loser will have a portion of his/her physical strength temporarily deducted in proportion to the disparity between the two sides. But again, if the opponent wins, the person who is suppressed is himself. When Zhao San mentioned for the first time that he wanted to kick himself out of the team, Untu did not do that, but chose to resist. From that moment on, Su Tong was certain that after Untu paid the huge compensation, he would never get more script points than himself. But he didn't expect that the difference would be so huge. Untu was stunned when he heard the prompt. He had no idea that there was such a shameless thing in the world. You killed my people, took my money, and finally used my money to kill me? Is there anything so despicable and shameless in the world? Before Untu could recover, Su Tong punched the holy light shield in front of him. With Untu's overall strength weakened by half, even the holy light shield has become fragile. Obviously, his own divine power is no longer enough to maintain such a high-strength holy light shield. Under Su Tong's heavy punch, the holy light shield that had been able to withstand hundreds of sword energies trembled violently. Kaka. Delicate cracks opened like spider webs. And Untu and Zhao San could only watch helplessly. Because of the 3-minute protection period, the two of them were now unable to cause any harm to Su Tong. At the same time, a strong feeling of weakness came over, making Untu feel that his limbs became heavy, as if his whole body was tied with lead weights. Boom. Fortunately, Tommy on the side saw this and immediately pointed his gun at Su Tong. Su Tong sensed the danger, but did not dodge at all. Instead, he activated the power of the devil in an instant, and the devil came. The dark hell armor appeared on him, and at the same time, when the devil came, his physique and strength were greatly improved again. Puff. However, Tommy's bullets were specially made demon-killing bullets, and the defense that the hell armor could provide was limited. Immediately, blood burst open in Su Tong's abdomen, and the pain made Su Tong's face tremble. It's just that he activated the Demon King's advent not for defense, but for offense. I saw rolling demonic flames surging as Su Tong's fist hit the holy light shield in front of him. Kick. The cracks in the holy light shield are getting bigger and bigger. Upon seeing this, Tommy aimed his gun directly at Su Tong's head. Boom. The bullet flew out from the muzzle of the gun. Su Tong just turned his head and let the bullet pierce a hole in his handsome cheek. His face was covered with blood and there was a huge hole. He looked like he had crawled out of hell. Of evil spirits. Madman. Seeing this scene, everyone was frightened. Even Untu was shocked by the murderous aura in front of him. Seeing that the shot missed, Tommy frowned, but before he could fire the third shot, the demons swarming around him had already jumped in front of him, forcing Tommy to put his gun back to parry. Just when he was entangled by these demons, Su Tong's fists were constantly hitting the holy light shield in front of him. Snapped. The indestructible holy light shield exploded, and his blood-stained hand grabbed Untu's throat from the countless fragments. Several thoughts flashed in Untu's mind. Dodge, parry, counterattack, but when these thoughts came up, he found that his sore and heavy muscles were like a poisoned computer. The command button had been pressed, but there was no response. The degree of lag was simply shocking. Crazy. In the flash of lightning, N2 felt a huge pain in his throat, and then his body was lifted up by Su Tong and hit hard against the wall behind him. Cough. With the tearing pain, Untu finally realized that the god of death was staring at him. He was startled and instinctively summoned a holy light to hit Su Tong. But the sword of holy light passed through Su Tong's body. Instead of causing any harm, it turned the demon behind who had just stood up into ashes. Conservation time. Now Untu felt as bitter as if he had eaten a cactus. He lost. But losing was extremely frustrating, so frustrating that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. A certified player was defeated head-on by a non-certified player who was in the process of promotion. No one would believe it if this news spread. But it is true. If Su Tong is upright, he has achieved head-on crushing by relying on his own strong strength. Even if Untu dies, he can only say that his skills are inferior to others. But Su Tong was not the one. This guy was taking advantage of the rules and loopholes from the beginning, and even calculated step by step at the end. He didn't even use his special move, and he was crushed and defeated. This depressing feeling is like that of an old monk who has been practicing Tongzi Kung Fu all his life, thinking that he has been pure in all six senses and has no desires or desires. In the end, he was defeated by a cross-dressing boss, which was so frustrating that it made people crazy. Don't move. It would be easy for me to kill you now. Su Tong's fingers clenched Untu's throat tightly, and his fingertips even penetrated under Untu's skin. At the same time, his body was completely hidden behind Untu, giving no chance to a sharpshooter like Tommy. You are very powerful, I admit it, I lost. Untu took a deep breath and quickly calmed down. He was depressed, but when he thought about it carefully, he even had to admire this guy. In fact, Su Tong's tactics are not difficult to crack. After all, that prop card has its scope of application. As long as you keep distance from Su Tong will naturally not be able to share the damage. Especially Zhao San can summon the Black Rooster, which can run extremely fast. Even if Su Tong has 8 legs, he can't outrun the Big Rooster. They take full advantage of this to fly kites from a long distance. But it was Su Tong who had seen Zhao San's rogue methods, so he gave up and ran towards an empty place in the suburbs from the beginning. Instead, he came to the church with complex terrain, which seemed to limit his chance to escape, but it also invisibly limited the possibility of the two of them wanting to fly a kite. Su Tong had calculated every step clearly from the beginning. From this point of view, their defeat was not unjust at all. Knowing that he had no chance of making a comeback at this moment, he had seen the red flames erupted by Su Tong, which was hellfire. As long as he acted a little rashly, even if Su Tong died, he would be able to inject hellfire into himself before death. In the throat. Even a weak flame is enough to kill him completely. Thinking of this, Untu couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Even if he became a certified player, he could still feel the fragility of life sometimes. Libo, we admit defeat. If you don't want to kill me, just make some conditions. Zhao San said. He also had a backup move, Qiankai Long Live Bird, and a move called Light Tong Chen, but he knew better that the Libo in front of him didn't use his full strength either. At least the old Taoist I saw last time didn't show up. In addition, they are all injured now. If they continue to fight, they may lose their lives here. Since Libo did not kill him, it means that there are still conditions for negotiation. Surrender order. Su Tong said expressionlessly, the condition is that you will do your best to help me complete the promotion task. Only after the task is completed can you return, otherwise you will die. Impossible. Untu decisively refused, it's not that we don't want to help you. We can fail the mission, but there is no point in doing so. The mission lines for promoting certified players are often separate missions. Sometimes we can't intervene if we want to. Let's do this. We sign a surrender order. Wherever we conflict with you, we will voluntarily give up. and we can no longer attack you in any form in this script world. Zhao San suggested that this was their biggest concession. Even if it was surrender, there was a bottom line in the negotiation. If the result of the negotiation was to take them to the other extreme, then they would rather die than die. Okay. But I have to add one more thing. Re-invite me into the team and give me the highest authority. When something goes against me, you must inform me. Of course Su Tong knew that Untu and the others would not agree to his invitation, so when they settled for the next best thing, he showed his fox tail. After all, in Su Tong's understanding, negotiation is nothing more than a lion opening its mouth and sitting on the ground to pay back the money. When they heard that Su Tong wanted to pull them into the team, Untu and Zhao San couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. That damn auxiliary item card looks like team poison no matter how you look at it. Especially in the hands of the madman Su Tong. Su Tong had his life in his grasp, and he couldn't help Untu to negotiate terms. He could already feel the heat gradually rising from Su Tong's fingertips. Apparently the 3-minute protection period has expired. Make a deal. Realizing that he had no room for bargaining, Untu reluctantly submitted a surrender order. William Smith Doug delivers your order of surrender. In this scenario world, members of William's team are not allowed to attack you. Don't spread bad news about yourself. Information that is detrimental to you must not be withheld from you. And pull you into the team again, sharing all the team's welfare skills. Whether to accept. Su Tong listened carefully to the prompts in the prop book, and after confirming that there was no word game, he immediately chose to accept it. As soon as he chose to accept the surrender order, the time for protection on him was up. 3 minutes, not even a second timed out. But Su Tong just let go of Untu and ran straight to Tommy. Tommy, who was fighting the devil, couldn't understand what Kevin and Judge Untu were talking about. However, with many years of experience in hunting demons and the struggle between life and death, Tommy has always learned to keep his skills intact. When he realized that Su Tong was rushing towards him, a cold light flashed through Tommy's eyes. He kicked off his feet, stepped on a demon's head and jumped into the air. He recited an ancient exorcism spell in his hand, preparing to give Su Tong a blow. Blow. No trace for 1,000 years, no stiffness for a long life. But at this moment, a low and sneaky voice sounded quietly, causing Tommy's energy to dazzle. He felt that something was missing inexplicably, but he didn't know what was wrong. If Tommy could observe his own luck, he would find that at this moment, 2 birds were landing on top of his head, one on the left and one on the right, opening their mouths to swallow up the chi on top of his head. The 2 birds opened their mouths at the same time, spitting out the black fire of disgust again. Suddenly, a stabbing pain hit his heart, causing Tommy to scream, and his head felt like it was about to split. Soon after, Su Tong had already rushed in front of Tommy. He reached out and grabbed Tommy's shoulder, and a terrifying heat burst out, instantly making Tommy feel like he was falling into hell. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 565. Tommy's strength was not weak, but he was still physically mortal after all. Faced with a sudden heavy injury, he almost fainted. Sudden. When the hellfire burned on Tom's chest, a metal badge was exposed in the firelight. A pure white badge, I don't know what material it is made of. There are 2 keys on it, and 3 crowns. Is this the highest badge of honor of the Church? It is the emblem of the Pope, 2 keys, representing the power of heaven and earth. The 3 crowns represent that the Pope enjoys the highest legislative, judicial, and administrative powers in the world. This badge was originally a reward from the Pope to Su Tong, but Su Tong was dissatisfied with Tommy's behavior of intimidating him, so he did not accept the badge. The original plan was that Tommy would hand the badge back to him in person at night. But Tommy quietly put the badge around his neck. At this moment, the badge burst out into a scorching bright light. That disgusting holy aura suddenly erupted into a white shockwave, catching Su Tong and the others off guard. In an instant, Su Tong felt as if he had been thrown into scalding boiling water, and his body was blown away. The original demons around them also suddenly turned into ashes and were annihilated in the white light. Only when the bright light gradually disappeared, Tommy shook his unsteady body and turned around with difficulty to escape. "This way, Tommy!" Hearing the shout, Tommy turned his head and saw Art waving to him and rushing towards him. But this time someone moved faster than him. The judge Untu suddenly rushed out and came to Tommy's side. "Let me help you." Tommy was perked up when he saw this, but he was horrified to find that Untu's slowly raised finger was actually pointing at him. Sanction God's blade. In an instant, a strange magic circle appeared at the solace of Untu's feet, and then a dazzling bright light burst out and hit Tommy hard. In an instant, Tommy's skin and flesh were shattered, and he was blown away towards Su Tong like a kite with a broken string. "Meet death, Tommy." Expresslessly, Su Tong put his hand into Tommy's chest, and the hot hellfire pierced his chest with a hole as big as the mouth of a bowl. Maybe Tommy didn't understand until his death why Inquisitor Untu would murder him. Wasn't he the same as them? But you may not understand that what players are best at is changing their identities. Quickly understanding their own situation is a basic skill for every player. Now that Su Tong has rejoined the team, then they are one, and anyone who threatens Su Tong will also be their enemy. Moreover, since they have already boarded the pirate ship, this letter of surrender is naturally indispensable. Plop. Tommy's body fell heavily to the ground. Su Tong immediately took out the bell and used the soul-catching technique. He grabbed Tommy's body and forcibly pulled out his soul from Tommy's body and threw it into the entrance of the hall. "Go to the alchemy furnace." Seeing this scene, Art was immediately dumbfounded. He couldn't believe his eyes. Why did Inquisitor Untu, who had been fighting with Kevin just now, suddenly switch sides? Holy light prison of order. In a daze, Art suddenly found that one after another holy light was rising under his feet. The holy light formed a circle and trapped him inside. Art's body was immediately bounced back hard when it touched the holy light. "What a pity, kid." Untu's face showed reluctance and regret. In fact, he still liked Art very much, not least because he had the courage to submit the report to clear himself of the suspicion of killing Eritaya. I even saw a shadow of myself in Art. If he hadn't walked into the script killing experience hall due to an accident, then he should be peacefully practicing his profession as a priest in the small town now. Why? Why is this happening? Seeing Untu reaching out to him again, Art's mind suddenly began to speed up. At this time, a hand was placed on Untu's arm. "Don't kill him, keep him, maybe it will be useful." Su Tong knew that his real enemy was not Art and the others. He killed Tommy because this guy was too much of a threat and he almost killed him with just a few shots. Moreover, although the demon hunters and the church belong to the same family, the demon hunters have the freedom to act and are not commanded by anyone. They are an uncertain factor and must be killed. But Art is different. As long as Untu is still the judge, to a certain extent, Art is also their subordinate. Untu was startled and turned back to look at Su Tong, his expression a little surprised. "Don't look at me like that, I'm not a murderer." Su Tong shook his shoulders, although Xiaoke had a hole as big as a thumb on his face, and the blood dripping from his face made him look more like a devil who likes to play with people's hearts. "That's it?" Untu put down his hand, but still shot out a ray of holy light, temporarily knocking Art out. Then he threw a bottle of potion from the prop book to Su Tong and asked him to drink it first to recover. "Although I feel very unhappy, after all, we are all in the same boat, and now it is time to improve the relationship." Su Tong covered his face, drank the potion in one gulp, and signed the surrender order. He was not worried about what tricks Untu would dare to play. The reason why he covered his face was because the hole on his face was too big. If he didn't cover it, he would drink it in his mouth. About to flow out of the cheeks. I drank the potion in one gulp. I don't know if the potion had sugar added, it was a bit sweet and choked my nose. However, the effect of the medicine is indeed good, and coupled with my own dark constitution, the wounds on my face have scabbed within a short time. Although he is still far from being healed, at least what he said is true. Feeling almost recovered, Su Tongke walked to Tommy's body, took off the badge on his chest and threw it into the prop book. Pope's emblem. The Pope's personal treasure is said to be made from the bones of angels, but of course it's just a rumor. It is said that if you hold this item, you can make a wish to an angel. Passive skill 1, Purification, 0/500. When encountering a crisis, all the sacred power will be released at once and a sacred shockwave will be launched. Note, the sacred power can be supplemented by monks praying day and night. Su Tong played with the badge, already guessing its origin, but unfortunately, the power inside had been released. I don't have time to find someone to recharge myself, so I can only throw it into the prop book for the time being. Kaka kaka. The three of them took a moment to rest, but before they could take a breath, they suddenly heard a sharp roar coming from the corridor and the sound of falling off the wall. Those demons, Zhao San frowned. After the bodies of these demons are destroyed, they cannot be truly killed. Their souls will quickly find suitable parasites nearby. It is precisely because of this that people have a feeling of endless killing. For a moment, Zhao San turned his gaze to Su Tong, only to see Su Tong frowning and saying, "It's easier to invite gods than to send them away. Besides, their time has almost come, and it's not my power that maintains their existence now. Not you. Not me." When Su Tioxio's voice fell, the three of them received another task prompt at the same time. Main Mission 4, Sacrifice to the Evil God. Mission description: the sacrifice of the evil god has begun, and the entire Amontes will sink into the land of the evil god. Scream, repent, and the fallen will pay the price with blood. Mission goal: to prevent the reunification of hell and the human world, and to end the sacrifice of evil gods. Task time, 3 hours. Failure penalty, extremely high. When they heard the mission prompt, the three of them couldn't help but look at each other and seemed to be relieved. Especially Untu and Zhao San, what they are most worried about is that the next main mission will continue to conflict with Su Tong, so that they can only use the certified player privileges to forcibly exit the script world with extremely high punishment. When they submitted the surrender order to Su Tong, they were judged to have failed the mission, but strangely, the script space delayed the punishment. The calculation and punishment will not start until they leave the world of this script. This situation is not unheard of, but very rare. Often, depending on the nature of the script space, punishments take effect immediately. In that case, if they forcefully leave the world of this script, they are destined to suffer 2 mission penalties and a high price for forced exit. Even certified players can't handle such a punishment. If the core prop card is taken away, it will not be a serious loss of vitality, but will directly cost half a life. How will the script world be played next time? So now it seems that the situation is better than they imagined. As long as the tasks do not conflict, they don't have to worry about being punished anymore. However, the two of them did not notice that Su Tong's expression was a little strange at the moment. Because in addition to the main mission, he also received his final certification mission to kill the evil god Josie. Special Mission 3, Kill the Sacrifice to the Evil God Josie. Mission description: Archbishop Arashia summoned the evil god at the cost of his own life and signed a contract with him. The evil god successfully parasitized Josie Morgan and is about to complete the summoning ceremony in accordance with the contract. Only by killing her can we avoid future troubles. The only thing that can kill Josie Morgan is the Santia's spear sword. Mission goal, kill the evil god Josie. Task time, 3 hours. Failure penalty, failure to advance. Su Tong looked at the prompts given in the props book and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Is Santia's spear and divine sword the gun under the Inquisition? Untu frowned when he heard the words, then nodded, looked at Su Tong without knowing what was going on, and said coldly, if you are interested in that thing, I advise you to give up your heart as soon as possible. That deep heart I don't dare to approach the pit easily, anyone who falls in will die. Hearing Untu's words, Su Tong couldn't help but take a deep breath. He could already feel the deep malice of the script towards him this time. He spread his hands helplessly, then just wish me good luck. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 566. What do you want to do? Untu suddenly became nervous. Su Tong stood up. Generally speaking, promotion missions are one level lower than your main missions, but you and I are exactly the opposite. Su Tong briefly recounted what happened in the hospital from beginning to end, allowing Untu and Zhao San to figure out the truth. This. Untu was silent for a moment, and when he thought about it carefully, it was indeed the case. Whether it's their pursuit, the church's pursuit, or the changes in Evelyn and Josie, it seems a bit overwhelming for a promoted player. Could it be that you were offended? Zhao San seemed to have thought of something, but before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Untu. Don't talk nonsense, we have no evidence for this matter, so we can't just talk. Untu immediately explained to Su Tong, we have some speculations, but we can't say these things now because there is no evidence. Saying it directly will have adverse effects. Because of the surrender order, Untu must give an explanation. He then said, if you can be promoted, you can use your arbitration rights to arbitrate the script world. If there are really special circumstances, script world will give you a reasonable compensation. Su Tong nodded when he heard this and said he would take note of it. At the same time, there was a bang sound from the immortal furnace at the entrance of the hall. It is the soul of Tommy the Witcher that has been refined. Dia opened the pill furnace and saw a grey pill rolling out, and threw it out of the hall to Su Tong. Su Tong took it and threw it into the prop book. Seeing the elixir refined from Tommy's soul, Su Tong was stunned for a moment, feeling a little surprised. He didn't expect it to be such a strange thing. But this pill came at the right time. Thinking of this, Su Tong calmed down and discussed with Untu in a low voice. Deciding to separate temporarily, they first went to prevent Evelyn and Xiao Qian from completing the sacrifice to the evil god, while Su Tong followed the clues and went to the Inquisition. It's just that this place is not close to the Inquisition. Are you sure there is no problem for you alone? Zhao San looked out the window and saw a grey world outside the window. The sacrifices to the evil gods have begun, and the residents of Amontes will be continuously pulled into the other world until the other world and Amontes completely overlap, becoming a connection between hell and the human world. If you listen carefully, you can easily hear the constant screams of people on the street, which sounds very uncomfortable. Don't worry, I think even if this road leads to hell, I won't be alone on the way to hell. Su Tong glanced at Art on the ground. I heard it all. Art opened his eyelids, shook his head and sat up straight from the ground. Untu's holy light hit his head painfully, but after all, he was of the holy light system, and Art still had a certain immunity. He sat up and looked directly at Su Tong. Evelyn really betrayed the church. As a divine hunter of the church, he naturally had an almost obsessive trust in the 12 red archbishops, so after hearing Su Tong tell what happened in the hospital, Art refused to believe it in his heart. It cannot be said that he is betrayal, maybe he is more loyal than anyone else. Su Tong knew very well that Evelyn and Aratia had never betrayed their faith. It's just that the way they are loyal to the Lord of God is expressed in another way. Just like Judith who betrayed the Lord of God thousands of years ago, he willingly gave up the position of the 12 apostles remaining in the mural and used his own evil to set off the majesty of the Lord of God. But Su Tong would not explain these things to Art. Because Art hasn't understood the step yet. As the old saying goes, heaven and hell are one family, which is obviously impossible for Art to accept. So Su Tong's statement was more direct, they were only temporarily confused by the devil, but no matter what, as the church's divine catcher, you have the obligation and responsibility to act with me, unless, you are a coward. Art got up from the ground, I'll go with you, but I will personally take you into the cell afterwards. Count us in, if you're going to hell, we're going to catch you too. In the corner, Sheen, Dorsey, Sagem, Hugh, and Ian came out with support. Each of them had a lot of injuries. They were besieged by demons just now, and it was already difficult to resist the demons that kept appearing. They thought they were certain to die, but Su Tong suddenly ran past them with a mocking doll. Thanks to the venomous tongue of the mocking doll, the demons that originally besieged them changed their targets in an instant, allowing them to survive by chance. They all heard the conversation just now. Since Art is going to go, as members of the divine catching team, they will naturally not let their guard down at this time. Hey! Su Tong tilted his head and looked at Untu. Look, I told you a long time ago that I am not alone. Then good luck to you. Untu is not optimistic about Su Tong, especially after Zhao San raised the possibility. Untu is even less optimistic about Su Tong. To borrow an Eastern proverb, man cannot fight with the sky. Of course, Untu couldn't tell them directly. Their time was limited, and they didn't dare to stay here any longer. After saying goodbye to Su Tong, they got on Zhao San's big rooster and quickly left the church. Of course, before leaving, Untu still fulfilled his duties as a judge and a superior. He used the holy light technique to treat Art and the others. Although the effect was not particularly good, it was better than nothing. Be strong. Let's go. Su Tong took a deep breath and led everyone out of the church door. In the gray world, screams come from unknown places from time to time, which makes people feel deeply uneasy. This is an inner world, and it is a very deep inner world. You can't see the sky when you raise your head. Even if the world in front of you still has some rudiments of reality, everything you see is devastated. You have to do it as soon as possible. If you wait too long, you may be in big trouble. Su Tong touched his heart and said. On the way, Art walked to Su Tong's side. Are you sure you want to go down? I mean that dungeon. Speaking of the dungeon, Art also felt a little uneasy. After all, no one could say whether the things under the dungeon were still alive, but when he joined the Inquisition, he learned that no one had ever come out of the deepest part of the dungeon alive. Even every year, some people will be caught by the gods, inexplicably walking to the edge of the dungeon and jumping down. Now that he knew that Su Tong's purpose was to go down to the dungeon to pull out the rumored Santai's spear and sword, Art naturally wanted to oppose this approach. Even with Kevin's special physique, no one can guarantee that he can come out alive. Even if he succeeds, without the suppression of Santai's spear sword, what will happen if the demon under the dungeon suddenly wakes up? Those are demons who were sealed here by angels in ancient times. Can they be opponents? Facing Art's nagging questions, Su Tong couldn't help but frown, took out an apple from the props book and stuffed it into Art's mouth. The road is walked, not spoken. How come there are so many multiple choice questions, made for you? As he spoke, Su Tong quickened his pace. Seeing that his persuasion was ineffective, Art stopped wasting his words. The 7 people hurried forward slowly, but there were more and more sounds coming from all around. I don't know if it's a human or a ghost. Who is it? As they walked, Dorsey suddenly noticed a black figure in front of them, slowly approaching them. He tensed up and immediately pointed his gun at the black figure in the distance. Etc. Fortunately, Art on the side had quick eyesight and quick hands, and he held down the muzzle of Doshi's gun. Art's pupils were flashing with a faint fluorescent light, and his eyes were fixed on the direction of the white fog in the distance. The shadow in the gray mist seemed to be aware of the sound here, hesitated for a moment, and then rushed toward Su Tong and the others. "Help! Help me!" came a person's voice. Dorsey and Art looked at each other and put down their pistols. Not long after, a middle-aged man in a suit ran out of the street in a panic. When he saw Su Tong and the others, the man in the suit was startled at first because he saw the unique gray clothing of the detective team. But what followed was a burst of ecstasy. Thank God, he had never felt for a moment that these inquisitions, which people usually hear about, would make people feel so friendly. As he spoke, he quickened his pace and walked toward them, chattering as he walked, "God, who can explain to me why I am here? I am just a sincere and kind-hearted ordinary person." Art didn't know how to explain to the other party, but he still stepped forward and comforted him, "Don't worry, God has not abandoned you. You are safe. We will." In the middle of what he said, Art suddenly froze on the spot. Not only Art, but also Dorsey and others couldn't help but shrink their pupils and quickly pointed their guns at the man. Looking at the muzzle of the gun pointed at him, the man was startled. His feet suddenly stopped in mid-air and he looked at Art at a loss. He looked panicked, like a child who had done something wrong, but he didn't know what he was. The place was not done well. The man opened his mouth, not knowing what to say, and his eyes became more and more panicked. After all, the reputation of the divine catchers is not good in Amontes, and they are often even associated with executioners. It wasn't until the man followed everyone's gaze and looked at his lower abdomen that he was startled. He didn't know when a black and twisted hand appeared on his lower abdomen. "What's this?" After the man saw this, he was instantly frightened. He stretched out his hand to pull the hand off, but the hand seemed to have grown on his body. No matter how hard the man tried, he could not pull it out. Until the man tore off his clothes and his face instantly turned pale. I saw that this ugly and weird arm was connected to his abdomen, as if it was a hand growing from his abdomen. "What is this? This is not my hand. This is not my hand." He screamed and tried to defend himself while trying with all his strength to rip the hand off. "That's your hand." Su Tong walked out, looked at the palms on the man's abdomen, and looked at the man's two hands. He saw that the man's index finger and ring finger were particularly slender and neat, especially the index finger was almost as long as the ring finger, and he became more sure. "Own ideas. Third hand, you must be a thief." The man was stunned for a moment, then immediately denied it. "Nonsense, I am a decent designer, how could I steal something?" "If you are not a thief, you must have stolen other people's things, so you were dragged into hell so quickly. This hand is the devil in your heart." Su Tong stared coldly at the luck above the man's head. Seeing that the luck above the man's head was rapidly passing away, he was getting closer and closer to defeat. "You." The man's face turned pale. He was a designer, but he was not an excellent designer. On the contrary, all his famous designs were stolen from other people's inspirations and ideas. Not only did he shamelessly take it for himself, he even killed his friend just for the sake of the unpublished design drawings in his friend's hands. "No, I'm not a thief, I'm not a thief, not." Thinking of his friend's death and the arm on his belly, the man became increasingly uneasy. Even though he tried desperately to deny it, the hand was always on his body. Suddenly, when the man saw the hand on his belly, he slowly opened his mouth and let out a sneaky whisper. Chris, you stole my idea. You promised me you would finish this building with me, you despicable thief." The familiar voice was the curse of his good friend before his death, which made Chris panic. He was getting more and more panicked, and all kinds of accusations and abuses filled his mind. "No, it's you, you don't deserve it. These excellent designs should have belonged to me. Only I can make people identify with these buildings. You stupid bastards, go to hell. Chris was dancing and gesticulating, still struggling with time in his mind, looking for excuses for himself. But in Su Tong's eyes, they saw more and more arms stretching out from Chris's body. These arms were twisting greedily in the air, seeming to have a special power that could snatch anything from everyone. It wants the same thing. But in the blink of an eye, Chris, an excellent designer, has completely turned into a monster. Seeing that Chris had been completely demonized, Su Tong ejected a sword energy with hellfire and instantly cut off Chris' head. Let's go, we don't have much time, there will be more and more of this kind of thing. Seeing that everyone was still looking at the corpse on the ground in a daze, Su Tong could only remind him that Amontes, the second largest city in the empire, was not only wealthy, but also full of all kinds of exaggeration and lewdness. Chris is just an insignificant one among them. I believe that soon, more people will be involved and then become completely demonized like Chris. After hearing Su Tong's words, everyone looked at each other and gasped. Now they are beginning to realize the seriousness of the matter. If it is true as Su Tong said, at least 2/3 of the entire population of Anmantesri will become demons. By then, the entire empire may be destroyed. So everyone immediately quickened their pace and looked at the woods not far ahead, figuring that as long as they passed through the woods, they could reach the farm, which was the Inquisition. Save me, save my child, please, I will give everything to you. At this moment, a woman rushed out from the grey fog and rushed forward, trying to grab Su Tong's hand. Su Tong turned aside, and his wife caught a moment and fell to the ground. But even if she fell, the lady would always hold the child in her arms tightly and look at everyone with pleading eyes, please, save my child, save my child. Hearing the child, Chin, who was walking behind, fell into a trance, seeming to remember the time when her parents were killed by demons. Her heart suddenly felt as if it had been scratched. During the hesitation, the woman reached out and grabbed her wrist. Please, save him. This is my child. Look how cute he is. He hasn't opened his eyes yet, hasn't seen the sunshine of this world, and he hasn't even seen his mother. I don't want to let it see me like I am now, please. The woman raised her head and pointed to the side of her face. Only then did Chin notice that there were large black spots on the woman's face. The dark spots are rapidly corroding her skin, and I'm afraid she will be completely demonized before long. Even with a heart as strong as steel, upon hearing such pleading, he could not help but feel sad. The bridge of Chin's nose was sore, and her eyes instantly became moist. She could understand the woman's mood, just like when she was a child, her mother was bitten by a neighbor's vicious dog in order to protect herself. Thinking of this, Chin mustered up the courage to look at the child in the woman's arms. When the clothes were lifted, she didn't see the so-called baby. She only saw a mass of sarcoma. The sarcoma was completely connected to the woman's body and was growing continuously. The ground absorbs the nutrients from the woman's body. Suddenly, Chin was stunned for a moment, a bad premonition came over him, and he immediately wanted to hide back. But the woman grabbed Chin's arm, changed her expression from Si-min, and screamed with a ferocious expression, "You promised me to save my child, don't leave, you bitch, tear your clothes off quickly, come feed my baby." The strong contrast between the woman before and after made Chin panic. For some reason, she felt a strong sense of guilt in her heart, as if she really owed her something. At this moment, a hand suddenly grabbed Chin's shoulder and forcefully pulled her back from the woman's hand. "Mine." Seeing the duck flying away, the woman rushed forward with a ferocious face, but what greeted her was only a ball of red hellfire. Boom! The red fire like a huge wave immediately knocked the woman away. At this time, Chin came back to her senses and looked back to see Su Tong's cold face, just when she was about to say thank you. However, Su Tong slapped Chin's face with his backhand. "Remember, Don't indulge in self-movement. It will only make you weak and easy to bully. The greatest kindness to your enemies is to send them to hell. The cold scolding and the burning pain on her face made Chin a little angry for a moment, but neither Art nor Dorsey and the others surprisingly did not say anything to stop her. Because just now, they had called Chin countless times, but Chin seemed to be possessed and ignored their calls. If it weren't for Su Tong, Chin would have sacrificed his body to this demonized woman at this time. Su Tong estimated that in reality, this woman was the kind of unruly and fierce woman. He likes to take advantage of others. To put it bluntly, he just bullies honest people. Otherwise, how could he be dragged into the other world so quickly? In short, no one drawn into the other world at this stage is a kind person. Chin, who woke up after being beaten, also realized that she seemed to be really crazy just now, and she actually felt guilty for these monsters. Now she was very lucky that Su Tong slapped her awake, otherwise this kind of, once the seed of an idea is planted in your heart, sooner or later you will be destroyed by the seed. Everyone continued on their way, but fortunately after passing through the woods, they no longer encountered those demonized humans. It was just when they came to the gate of the Inquisition without stopping. The ground in front of him was already covered with corpses. Art walked over to a corpse. The corpse was mutilated, but it could be seen that his body had been completely demonized. When Art saw the face of the corpse, he recognized it immediately. It's him. Su Tong also recognized the owner of this corpse. It was the mayor who made things difficult for him in the first place. This guy was invited to the Inquisition afterwards and was imprisoned in a cage. Now that he appears here and has been completely demonized, everyone can't help but worry about the current situation in the dungeon. But since these people have become demons, who killed them? With doubts, everyone walked into the farm. Before they even reached the dungeon door, everyone's faces instantly turned pale, and they saw a trace of black mist coming out of the dungeon door. Just being close makes them feel a strong sense of discomfort. Back off. Art knew very well the origin of this feeling. Normally, he would only feel this way when walking in front of the abyss in the deepest part of the dungeon, but the demonic energy under the dungeon had actually spread up. You guys wait for me here, I'll go down. Su Tong took a deep breath. His behavior was completely different from that of Art and others. Instead, he felt more comfortable than ever before, as if even the air around him had become sweeter. I'm with you. As long as you're part of our team, I have no reason to let you go down alone. Art stepped forward. Although the atmosphere in the dungeon made him very uncomfortable, Art was still determined to follow Su Tong if Su Tong really became a demon. As the leader of the squad, it was his duty to kill him himself. Whatever. Su Tong glanced at Art and walked into the dungeon. The originally white holy rock outside the dungeon was now completely dyed black. After taking just a few steps, Art couldn't stop vomiting. The air inside was no less than a chronic poison to him. Wait for me outside. Seeing this, Su Tong couldn't bear the misfortune of this guy following him, so he advised. Art was speechless, stubbornly shook his head, and tore off his cuffs and wrapped them around his face to show that he could do it. Seeing this, Su Tong said nothing. Anyway, if he continued walking deeper, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. When the time comes, he would naturally retreat. The two of them walked along the corridor of the dungeon until they reached the third floor, when they saw a faint candle light in the dark dungeon. What was even more unexpected was that under the candle light, a person was leaning against the wall, seemingly waiting. Just like myself. It's you. When Su Tong saw the figure clearly, he suddenly became alert. The person standing under the candlelight was none other than Thalia, the administrator who had disappeared for some time. Thalia appears here, so there will naturally be an answer to who did those corpses outside. It's finally here. Thalia's figure stood under the candlelight, and the hazy light made it difficult to see the expression on her face. She could only hear her saying in a teasing tone, "Pull out that spear, and you will die. Now if you give up this promotion task, you can still apply after 3 script worlds. Have you thought clearly? Once the spear is pulled out, the demon below will inevitably revive. According to the last experience, the first thing this guy will do when he wakes up is probably to kill himself. But if you don't pull out the spear, without this weapon, you won't be able to complete the promotion mission." Although Thalia said it nicely, who can guarantee that he will be able to successfully pass the next promotion mission? What Untu and the others said before had already made Su Tong realize that as long as he became a certified player, he could use his privileges to apply for arbitration when facing unfairness, but non-certified players did not even have the qualifications to question it. Thinking of this, Su Tong took a step forward, put his body close to Thalia, looked at the face under the candlelight, and said word by word, "I never do multiple choice questions, I want them all." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 567. You can't have your cake and eat it too, greedy people will never end well. Tai's eyes were fixed on the crystal ball. When he saw Su Tong's figure stepping into the cell, he seemed to be responding to Su Tong's words from a distance. Everyone wants to have both, but that is something that can only happen but cannot be sought. Otherwise, why would the ancients often say that it is difficult to have both loyalty and filial piety, and it is difficult to have both affection and justice? The vast majority of people who want to grab both hands will end up in vain, or even pay for it with their own lives. I have seen many such examples myself. Maybe after today, we will see another case. Mr. Tai put a smile on his lips and looked at the girl in front of him. It's not too late to regret it now. 300 years is not a short period of time. Aimee shook her head and silently looked at the picture in the crystal ball in front of her. The outcome was undecided. There was no need for any argument. Silence was the best answer. Through the crystal ball, Su Tong had already walked down to the iron door. Compared with the last time, this iron door was now covered with rust. "Are you sure you want to go down with me?" Su Tong looked at Art behind him. When he came here, Art's face was extremely pale, and even standing there gave people a shaky feeling. "I'm okay." Art lowered his head and put his fingers in the hole, pinching his thigh hard. Su Tong thought for a moment and patted Art on the shoulder. "I'll give you this. If you can't hold it, just eat it. Maybe it can help you." What Su Tong gave Yate was a pill. Pilgrims. After eating it, you will receive special power blessings and the heart of a pilgrim. Pilgrim's heart, it can infinitely enhance the bright side of the heart, making it glow with the power of faith. The stronger your faith, the greater the increase you will gain. This elixir was refined by Tommy's soul. Su Tong didn't know what the effect would be, but what was certain was that it would have absolutely no effect if taken by itself. He had no faith at all in gods, so he ate in vain. Rather than doing this, it would be better to give it to Art. This was also the reason why he wanted to bring Yate here, but Su Tong didn't know what effect Yate would have after eating it. Art didn't know what this thing was, but he felt a strong burning sensation when he held it in his hand, as if he heard the call of some voice. Good. Art put the elixir in his pocket, feeling that he could hold on and wouldn't need the elixir for the time being. Buzz. The iron door was slowly opened. "Are you sure you want to go down?" Amrita's voice came, reminding Su Tong again, "The contract Lilith left behind is that she can only appear when you are on the verge of death. That will take time. If the guy below swallows you directly, come on, even Lilith has no ability to resurrect your soul. It's like she's here and something good will happen to me." Su Tong rolled his eyes, ignored Amrita's suggestion, and pushed open the iron door in front of him. Su Tong never dared to expect Lilith to come over. Even among the people he least expected to see, Lilith definitely ranked first. Although he couldn't help but vomit when he thought of her, remembering the last time that dry fried beef river. Although it is incomparably delicious, if you are using it to make ingredients for yourself, forget it. So from the beginning, I never thought about it and regarded this matter as a so-called fallback path. On the bluestone steps, the footsteps of two people continued to echo in the panic dungeon. Before, this place was a forbidden area where strangers were not allowed to enter, but now, it was even worse. There was deathly silence all around, and at a glance, there was only darkness that could not be reached. No one could see clearly what was ahead, and the feeling of being unknown with every step was as frightening as hip-hop dancing on the Mount Tai ropeway. At this time, a bright light suddenly hung above the heads of Su Tong and Yat. It was Su Tong who activated the active skill of Suanhua Orb, the Suanhua Spiritual Heart Lamp. Suanhua Soul Lamp. It consumes 20 script points and activates it to summon a bright lamp. The area covered by the light can reduce the damage caused by evil attributes. The soul lamp hung in mid-air, dispersing the surrounding black fog. It was also through the protection of this hanging lamp that Art, who was following behind, had a chance to breathe. But when the two of them continued to walk down, even if they were protected by hanging lights, the oppressive and suffocating darkness came over, as if they were swallowed up tightly. At this time, they saw a corpse. They didn't know when the corpse was. It had rotted and turned into white bones, but judging from the clothes on it, it should be that of a certain divine hunter. Rumor has it that there are often gods caught in the dark, walking into the dungeon by themselves, and then jumping into the abyss, never to be heard from again. No one can tell how many bones there are under this abyss. Cough cough cough. A dozen meters further down, Art's face gradually turned green, and he obviously couldn't control it anymore. He felt like there were bugs in the air eating away at his skin, and he felt the pain of having nowhere to start and itching. It drove Art crazy. On the contrary, Su Tong felt like he was soaking in a hot spring, as if he was born to belong here without any discomfort. Bright. At this time, under the stone steps ahead, wisps of candlelight illuminated the way forward. Art opened his eyes wide, wondering if there was anyone else down there. Looking through the fog, the flickering candlelight gradually became clear, and a sound of chanting hymns came to my ears. A monk? With doubts, Art unconsciously quickened his pace, and gradually he saw clearly that they were several nuns. The nuns stood on both sides, holding candles in their hands, illuminating the stone steps along the way. Just when Art wanted to get closer, a hand from behind suddenly pulled him back. "Don't go over, they are not human." Of course, what Art could see, Su Tong could also see. Even under dark vision, he could see more clearly. When he was in the hospital, he saw these nuns through the window. Damu's death was inseparable from these nuns. "Look, they have no face." Following Su Tong's words, Art squinted and looked over quietly. Sure enough, under the black nun's hat, the void was pitch black, with no human face. Ghost nun. The muscles under Art's face kept twitching. The rumored ghost nun could actually be seen here. The practice of nuns is very hard, and many of them even made mistakes and were forced to become nuns by their families. As a result, many nuns could not bear the loneliness and fell into depravity. In order to punish them, the church would put iron masks on them. These nuns would often turn into ghost nuns after death, but their faces would also be stripped away by the Lord. Although they are not demons, they can devour anyone who looks at them. At that moment, Art immediately averted his eyes, fearing that they would swallow his soul. At this moment, these ghost nuns stood neatly in a row, illuminating the remaining steps for them, looking more like they were welcoming them. "Be careful, they can devour souls, don't look into their eyes," Art reminded in a low voice. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly and felt relieved. No wonder the last time he looked at these ghost nuns in the corridor on the third floor of the hospital, he felt like his soul was touched. "I have the blessing of Mimi Sha, the bonus of dark physique, and the blessing of prop cards such as the space-fixing mirror. I have an absolute advantage in soul power and I am not afraid of these ghost nuns. At best, their power can only destabilize their souls. If they want to devour them directly, I'm afraid they don't have the strength yet. But just in case, Su Tong thought for a while and pinned the ghost bamboo lantern that Lao Tao made for himself from the prop book to his waist. Ghost lights up. Spend 100 script points to light the ghost lantern. Once the soul suffers irreversible trauma or is attacked, the damage will be transferred to the ghost lantern. Note, after the ghost bamboo lantern is lit, it cannot be included in the prop book once it is damaged, it cannot be repaired. I saw that the wick was gradually lit up with a faint fluorescent light. Even in such a dark environment, if you don't look carefully, you can't find the faint light shining inside. The exquisite size looks like some kind of decoration. Then Su Tong took another look at the luck above his head. At this moment, his luck was about to hit a low point. Ever since Evelyn kicked herself out of the church, she had suddenly lost her wealth and power, and her entire luck was declining rapidly. Later, when he approached this abyss, his luck gradually became blurred until it reached its lowest point. There is even a faint ray of white light, which slightly reveals luck. This is the beginning of the white light, and the white light ends before it reaches the end. Often only people who are about to die have such luck. It can be seen how bad his luck is at this moment. I took out the lucky perfume I bought from Lei and tried to spray it on myself. Sure enough, my luck really improved a lot. After making all preparations, Su Tong glanced at Art. It's still too late for you to leave now. Come in with me later. You may not know what will happen. Art's expression was not good now, and Su Tong could see that he was still trying to hold on. The fact that he could hold on to this point without eating the pilgrim coin he gave him, even if Su Tong was lighting it up with a hanging lamp, was enough to show the inner tenacity of Art. But going inside, it can no longer be supported by just the inner breath. Art looked at the ghost nuns in front of him, hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and decided to follow Su Tong to the end. After all, he had come. Seeing Art's insistence, Su Tong didn't waste any time and just kept walking forward. Along the way, Art kept his head down, not daring to raise his head, for fear that he would accidentally look into the eyes of these ghost nuns. Just keeping walking forward with your head down like this makes people feel that this road is very long. Suddenly, Su Tong, who was walking in front, stopped abruptly, making Art unable to dodge and almost bumping into him. He quickly stabilized his feet. Before asking what was going on, Su Tong said, "We're here. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 568. Outside the farm, Sajam carried the demonized corpses aside. Qin looked in the direction of the cell from time to time, her eyes full of worry. She even wanted to go down a few times to find out what was going on, but looking at the dark dungeon, she really couldn't muster the courage to go in. The only thing he could do was to put his hands on his chest and silently pray to the Lord. Praying that the two of them could come out of it as soon as possible. "Don't worry, the captain is no ordinary person." Dorsey walked to Qin, took out a cigarette from the box, and put it to his mouth. Qin glanced at him with disgust, turned around and walked upwind. Doshi was already used to this and continued to talk to himself. More than 300 years ago, Rome collapsed overnight, and witches and demons were rampant. It was a brave man who fought in the north and south, swept across the country, and unified the empire. Do you still remember his name? Remember, Alfred. It is said that the Pope personally presided over his coronation ceremony and handed him the silver key that symbolizes power in the world. Qin's history is good, especially regarding the history of the church. Alfred is the only emperor recognized in the history of the empire. It was he who completed the separation of divine power and human rights, even if it was only on the surface at the time. The Pope did hand him the silver key. It is precisely because of this that the empire is now prosperous. After saying that, Sheen looked sideways at Dorsey. Why, you still want to tell me, is the captain a descendant of Alfred? Ha 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 ha, as smart as you are, you will naturally guess this old trick, but what I want to tell you is that although the captain is not a direct descendant in the true sense, he does have the blood of Alfred the Great. And I can tell you responsibly that the silver key rumored to be given by the Pope is not a key in the true sense, but a special contractual power that will be hidden in the blood of every descendant of Alfred. Inside. So based on this, you can rest assured. Faced with Doshi's exaggerated expression, Sheen knew that this was probably a short story written and directed by Doshi to comfort her, but she felt much better for a moment. Hello. Suddenly, Props Master Shiu's shout came from the gate, followed by a holy light bomb, which was launched into the air by Shiu. With the help of the illumination of this holy light bomb, the expressions of the 5 people instantly became ugly. The swaying figures in the woods gradually became clearer under the holy light bombs. Damn, why are there so many? Dorsey threw away the cigarette butt in his hand, and those twisted demonic figures had formed a dark shadow, moving closer to them. As if receiving some kind of call from somewhere, I walked out of the woods in a blink of an eye with neat steps. On the other side, when Art heard Su Tong's arrival, his heart couldn't stop trembling, and he raised his head cautiously. A silver spear came into view. The simple gun body was carved with delicate textures, and it was still as bright as new even after 1,000 years. The body of the gun is not long, but the other end is shaped like a long sword. It's more of an extended sword than a spear. Such a weird shape is naturally impossible to see now, but Art naturally recognized the origin of the spear at a glance. Santia's spear, divine sword. Art has heard about this legendary weapon since he was born. He only saw it for the first time today, but it does not affect the unique status of this weapon in his heart and his deep sense of shock. And when Art continued to look down along the blade, the shock in Art's eyes gradually turned into doubt and confusion. One end of the sword blade was inserted into a corpse. The corpse was as thin as a pitiful monkey, and the broad sword blade would even disembowel him. Is this the rumored ancient demon king? Art said to himself. This was completely different from what he had imagined, and even the huge contrast made people feel absurd. I guess if other people knew that the demon king sealed by the spear god sword in the dungeon that they feared day and night actually looked like this, I wonder what their expressions would be like. Su Tong looked at the corpse, but his face was full of caution and vigilance. This seemingly almost dried corpse was left on the road, and probably not even a dog would chew it, but was that really all it was? He recalled the moment when he first entered the dungeon, and he still had goosebumps on his body. With doubts, Su Tong put his hand on the handle of the spear sword. Zitsiza. As a result, as soon as the palm of my hand touched the handle of the gun, it felt stinging as if touching a red-hot iron. When I turned my hand over, I saw that the palm of my hand had been burned with large blisters. This is a divine weapon, don't mess around. Art seemed to have expected this result. If you can't change your physique, you won't even think about pulling out this spear. Do you want to change your physique? Su Tong was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but smell some conspiracy from Art's words. He immediately did not touch the spear. Instead, he sat on the ground, took out some food from the prop book, and chewed it. Are you still in the mood to eat? Art looked at him eating and drinking, and felt anxious. Shouldn't he pull out the sharpshooter sword as soon as possible and leave? Eat. Su Tong threw him a piece of bread and gnawed on the chicken leg himself. Eat it. If you don't eat it, you may not have a chance. Kazi. As he said that, Su Tong also opened a bottle of Coke, which was cold and refreshing. This is the advantage of the prop book. The food thrown in it can always remain in the same state as when it was thrown in. Even the Coke is ice cold. Apart from not being able to save living people, the only unpleasant part is the limited grid space. Apart from your own prop cards, set aside a separate half-page grid to hold miscellaneous items. I don't know how much the number of grids can increase after becoming a certified player. Art looked at the bread in his hand and didn't know whether to cry or laugh for a moment, but seeing that he was eating so deliciously, his stomach began to growl. Then eat some. Come on, let's sit down and eat. Su Tong pulled Yate to sit down and pushed all the snacks and fruits to Yate, which made Yate look suspicious, wondering how he brought these things with him. But don't say it, although the things are very strange, most of which he has never seen before, they taste really delicious. As he was eating, Art smelled the smell of tobacco. When he saw that Su Tong had stopped eating, he started to smoke a hookah. I couldn't help but roll my eyes, thinking that Bishop Kevin was too unreliable. But Art didn't know that Su Tong was not simply enjoying eating and smoking, but thinking. I reviewed the world of this script in detail in my mind. Every detail was replayed on the screen in Su Tong's mind. In a daze, he could feel that there was an invisible hand covering the top of his head, as if it was manipulating everything. Whether it is the promotion mission in the script world or the appearance of Thalia, the final point of all conflicts is to let yourself pull out this spear. Then, if I pull out this gun, does it mean that that moment is the day of his death? At this moment, Su Tong suddenly had an idea and asked Art, "Art, do you understand this gun? Is it a gun or a sword?" Hearing Su Tong's sudden inquiry, Art puffed out his cheeks and explained while chewing bread, "Understood, everyone in the church understands. It is said that on Thanksgiving Day, a craftsman prayed to the Lord to allow him to forge a weapon that would go down in history. As a result, a meteorite happened to hit his blacksmith shop that day. The craftsman worked hard and used Damascus forging methods to forge this unique spear sword. Because of its unique shape, it was often criticized by future generations. Many people even suspected that the craftsman originally wanted to forge a big sword, but inexplicably forged the hilt into a gun handle. Moreover, this gun cannot be used by ordinary people at all. It feels like an ordinary weapon in the hand. It has no characteristics except that it is a little harder. It wasn't until the later battle between the devil and the angel that the spear and sword seemed to be inspired by the Lord of God, and it automatically flew into the angel's hand. So far, this artifact has become the nightmare of all demons. And people later discovered that because battle angel's figure and hands were different from ordinary people, this spear sword looked more like a two-handed sword in their hands. So this is an artifact specially forged for angels, and mortals cannot exert its power at all. I see. Su Tong narrowed his eyelids. He understood that even though he risked his life and pulled out the sword, he could not use it at all. He was even forced to transform into a divine physique, thus losing most of his dark abilities. If he wanted to exert the power of the sword and divert the crisis, he had only one way to go. The soul leaves the body and steals the power of faith to unleash the maximum power of this artifact. For a moment, Thalia's figure appeared in Su Tong's mind. Thinking of this, Su Tong narrowed his eyelids and thought of something. Since it is a sword, it does not necessarily have to be an angel to use it. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 569. Su Tong slowly took out a kit in his hand. "You still refuse to come out? Are you planning to wait until I pull out this spear sword before you plan to kill me?" Art looked around, but couldn't see anything. Everything was quiet except for Su Tong's voice. Seeing no response, Su Tong continued, "If I were you, I would keep hiding and never come out again. This game was destined not to be participated in by you, a little miscellaneous fish, from the beginning." Rumble, rumble. As Su Tioxio's voice fell, bursts of rumbling sounds suddenly surged throughout the dungeon. Sounds surged from all directions, and the vast aura crushed them like a violent wind and huge waves. Suddenly, the Suanhua soul lamp above Su Tong's head was torn to pieces by the pressure. The terrifying aura surged in, making Art's hair stand on end. Only then did he realize with horror that the skin and flesh on his body actually had black mold spots. No matter how hard he scratched, the mildew seemed to soak into his flesh and began to eat away at his flesh quickly. Then there was a loud sneer, and with the black mist surging around him, a huge eyeball gradually took shape and appeared behind Su Tong. No body, no cheeks, just an eyeball. When Su Tong approached the dungeon for the first time, the sudden sense of peeping came from the gaze of this huge eyeball. But this time, the gaze was closer to Su Tong, and Su Tong could even feel that his soul was trembling uneasily. You don't need to look at it to notice the look on your forehead. The moment the eyeballs appear, they are like an oil lamp that has lost its lampshade. It may be extinguished at any time in the strong wind and has reached its lowest point. The danger of death was right before his eyes, but Su Tong couldn't help but smile. Look, you still can't hold it in. After Su Tong said this, he slowly turned around and looked directly at the huge eyeball. The moment their eyes met, Su Tong's face suddenly lost all color. The pupil of this eyeball was like an abyss that absorbed the mind. If his soul hadn't been firm, he would have been swallowed up by just one glance and would never recover. Art knew that he would never be able to hold on. The moment he saw the eyeball appear, he immediately took out Su Tong's pilgrim's pill and swallowed it in his mouth. After entering the elixir, the coldness all over Art's body was immediately relieved, and even the mildew spots on his body disappeared. But even so, Art still didn't dare to make eye contact with the eyeball in front of him easily. It's hard to imagine what kind of battle 1,000 years ago could have left such a powerful demon king with only one eyeball left. What is even more imaginative is how terrifying this demon king was 1,000 years ago. People living in such an era don't know whether to be happy or sad. Fortunately, I was able to see the battle between demons and angels, but sadly, I will inevitably be affected by the conflict between the two. Su Tong calmed down and held the brocade bag tightly in his hand. I won't say the same thing twice. Just stay here and I'll make sure nothing happens to you. His eyes stared into Su Tong's eyes. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, the surrounding demonic energy surged, and a huge laughter erupted. Art was so shocked that he almost fainted. I was almost deceived by you, Amarta's host. It's a miracle that you can survive until now. Amarta, you are a timid guy, do you think you can deceive me by teaching him such words? His eyes stared at Su Tong's body, as if he could look directly into Su Tong's spiritual world through his physical body and find the Dark Lord Amarta who was drinking red wine. Facing the ridicule from Eyeball, Amarta just raised the wine glass in his hand slightly to show respect, and then continued to taste his own wine gracefully and calmly, without any intention of responding to Eyeball. Stupid, you will pay for your silence. Amarta's silence caused the pupils of his eyes to shrink slightly. Seeing that the test was useless, he snorted and turned his attention to Su Tong again. This time the Eyeball slowed down and said, "Pull out that spear sword. In the name of the great devil Oliver, I will let you live, but you must pull out the spear sword first, otherwise." As he spoke, the surrounding demonic energy began to surge, squeezing towards the two of them. There is no corpse of the devil at all in this dungeon. In other words, the body of the great devil Oliver has long since been reduced to ashes, but his powerful spiritual will is still firmly nailed here by this spear god sword. There is no way to return to hell, nor to break through the barriers of the cell. Over the long years, the only thing he could do was to use his own power to slowly corrode the surrounding sacred rocks until he spread his spiritual power and found someone who could break its shackles. So at this moment, as long as Su Tong can pull out the spear god sword, it will be truly free. As for the lives of these two little ants after freedom, if the devil talks about integrity, how can he let people learn what is dangerous in the world? Su Tong seemed to believe Oliver's words, nodded and said, "That's really great." But after he finished speaking, as if he remembered something again, he took out a withered branch from the props book. "In addition, when I pull out this spear sword later, I don't want you to be so close to me, let's use this branch as the boundary." As he spoke, he strode forward, drew a sword aura casually, drew a deep sword mark on the ground, and inserted the branch into the ground. "Don't cross the line, anyone who crosses the line, will die." As soon as the word death came out, even the great devil Oliver couldn't help but feel a cold murderous aura. This couldn't help but make the big devil feel scared. He didn't understand how dare this little human dare to say such things to him. Didn't he know that he could cut him into pieces with just one thought? 10,000 segments. Just when Oliver was wondering, Su Tong slowly opened the brocade bag in his hand. That is, Mr. Tai, who was staring at the crystal ball, suddenly had his pupils widened, his face no longer as calm as before, and his eyes were staring straight at the kit in Su Tong's hand. No, it should be said that he was staring at the silver-white sword energy in the kit, which was as thin as a toothpick. Pure yang sword energy. Even though it was just a ray of sword energy, the moment this ray of sword energy slowly flew out of the brocade bag, Oliver immediately felt like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. The pupils of his eyeballs instantly shrank to the extreme, and he instinctively flew very fast. Dodge backwards. Until his huge eyeballs were completely buried in the thick black mist. What's this? Art stood aside and stared at the silver sword hanging from the brocade bag with wide eyes. Carefully feel the strange atmosphere above. Different from the sacred majesty of the church's holy light, this breath is very soft, so soft that it feels like a hand is placed on one's chest, warm and warm. But within the softness, it seems to contain a power more powerful than the holy light. This power is indescribable and difficult to describe in his language. Just like water, it can be a calm and peaceful lake, but it can also turn into waves that frighten the world. Unfortunately, Art didn't know that there is a saying that the best is like water. Not good. Seeing this ray of sword energy, Mr. Tai instinctively wanted to reach out his hand, but at this moment, Amy sitting in front of her finally broke the silence and said the first thing since the two began to make a bet. Sentence, "Are you going to break the contract?" Suddenly, Mr. Tai, who had his palm halfway out, his eyes turned cold, and he looked at Amy coldly. But now that Amy has spoken, she will never back down, saying word by word, "I will take a step back, you can take action, one chance, but I want to increase my chips." What chips? 600 years. Amy frowned slightly and put forward her own conditions. If Mr. Tai loses this time, not only will he not be able to get the 300 years that Amy mentioned before, but he will also have to erase the 300 years of shackles on them. This also means that the time for sisters Amy and Thalia to serve themselves is about to expire. Once they were no longer bound by the contract, the two of them could leave at any time, and Mr. Tai would have to spend a huge price to find a new administrator. During this period, your experience center will not be able to open normally. Thinking of this result, Mr. Tai couldn't help but hesitate, but when he saw the sword light in Su Tong's hand, Mr. Tai calculated in his mind that this was not a good deal. But if it can be exchanged for a chance to do something, the deal is not considered a loss. Ken. Seeing that Mr. Tai agreed to her conditions, Amy's eyes gradually became hot. It seemed that the gamble between her and Mr. Tai had only really begun now. I saw Mr. Tai slowly turning the crystal ball. As the crystal ball rotated, Oliver, who had originally promised to wait for Su Tong to pull out the spear god sword, suddenly fell into a trance, as if he felt some power interfering with his thoughts. Before he could understand what was going on, a voice appeared quietly in Oliver's consciousness. "Kill him." The vague voice gradually became clear, and Oliver was in a trance, and a black light gradually appeared in his pupils. Gradually, the voice in his head became stronger and stronger, and the murderous look in Oliver's eyes became more intense, and he even had a strong intuition in his heart, as if telling him that to stop this guy, he must stop him. The strong murderous aura caused the surrounding demonic clouds to surge together. Su Tong naturally noticed this. Upon seeing this, he slowly stretched out his hand and held the pure yang sword soul in his hand. Taking possession of the sword soul, a pure and powerful sword energy surged out uncontrollably, seemingly resisting Su Tong. Seeing this, instead of being angry, he slowly raised the sword soul and held it in his hand. "You want to kill me, how dare you?" As he spoke, Su Tong activated the power of formlessness. Tide all things. As soon as he finished speaking, the sword energy that was still resisting Su Tong suddenly poured into Su Tong's body. Suddenly, there were bursts of poetry in my ears. Communicate a golden elixir to the human world for eternity. As the sound of poetry hit his ears, Su Tong's dark energy completely disappeared, and his whole person began to have an ethereal aura. More than 3,000 Dharma treatises were practiced, and the sword was shining brightly all night long. I saw Su Tong unconsciously raising the sword in his hand, and in an instant, I saw the pure yang sword shining like a moon. A surge of majestic sword energy suddenly jolted Oliver's consciousness awake. The terrifying sword energy struck him, piercing his mind like a tough silver needle. The unprecedented fear suddenly woke Oliver up from his hazy mental state. Sword immortal. At the entrance of the hall, Dia screamed excitedly, unconsciously holding the fortune beside her with both hands and kneading it repeatedly. There are 3,000 laws in the world, and there are no sword immortals after the end of the Yuan dynasty. But since Lu Ziyu passed away, no one in the world has been able to cultivate this pure yang sword qi. It is said that the pure yang sword code left by Lu Ziyu is placed in Longmen Mountain of the Quanzhen sect, and all Quanzhen sect disciples can see it, but no one can truly succeed in cultivation. Back in the palace, the drunkard killed the dragon with one sword. Even Taoist Master Sun Long was so frightened by that sword that he broke out in cold sweat and even wanted to retreat for a time. One can imagine how terrifying that drunk man was. The drunkard left a message to Su Tong to find him alive because of Su Tong's bottles of fire-burning knives, which was probably to test Su Tong. In the end, he didn't expect that Su Tong really came back alive, so the drunkard added a pure yang power to the pure yang sword energy of the tree, turning it into a pure yang sword soul. It contains the essence of swordsmanship in the Chun Yang sword code, as well as the key tips for the drunkard to become a swordsman. The original intention was to give Su Tong an opportunity to find a sword and inject the sword soul into it. As long as he carries the sword all year round, he will naturally understand the sword's meaning as time goes by. But even if the drunken man's cultivation was unfathomable and his sword became a heavenly being, he would never have imagined that Su Tong would use the pure yang sword soul as a medium to transform himself into a pure yang body. He even took the opportunity to have an epiphany of the Chun Yang sword code in person. This is probably an opportunity that Su Tong himself did not expect. If he looks at his luck at this moment, he will find that his luck is rising steadily from unknown time, and there is a faint light shining on his luck from somewhere. That was destiny, even if it was just for a moment. For a moment, the image of the pure yang sword cannon and the vast energy of pure yang appeared in his mind. He closed his eyes and waved, and the pure yang sword soul in his hand was thrown straight into the spear god sword beside him. Later, Art and Oliver were surprised to find that the sharp sword made a harsh buzzing sound, and with the buzzing sound, the holy light curse patterns on the sword began to blur. Not good. Seeing that the church's artifact began to self-destruct, Art was frightened in his heart. He wanted to step forward to stop the magic sword from continuing to tremble. However, before he even got close, he was blown away by the sword energy surging in the air. Click. Oliver couldn't stop being ecstatic. He discovered that the sacred power nailed to his soul was about to disappear quickly. Moreover, the spear god sword was actually full of cracks. But he felt fear again, because he felt a power that made him even more afraid was resurrecting from the sword. Asshole. But Oliver may not know that at this moment, there is another person who is more angry and annoyed than him, and that is Mr. Tai, who is always observing all changes. You idiot, why don't you kill him? Do it quickly. Mr. Tai, who had never shown his emotions, started to get angry at this moment. Even he did not dare to reverse the trajectory of the script world. He had just interfered with Oliver's thinking. If a certified player discovers this matter and applies for arbitration, there will inevitably be backlash. Even though Su Tong was not a certified player, he did not dare to leave too many traces. But what he didn't expect was that Oliver actually gave up. At this moment, Mr. Tai wished he could remove Oliver from the script with his own hands. But he has no chance. The Ame in front of him always followed his every move with her eyes. Seeing this, Mr. Tai took a deep breath and gradually calmed himself down. Don't worry, I haven't lost yet. Ame didn't respond, silently looking at the picture in the crystal ball in front of her. In the picture, the artifact Santia's spear sword recorded in the history of the church has disappeared, replaced by another simple sword. Su Tong stretched out his hand to grab the hilt of the medium-sized sword, and gradually opened his eyes. In the black and white eyes, there was a silver ring. I saw Su Tong's hand caressing the sword. The originally wide sword blade was now only 3 fingers wide and 3 feet long. The cloud pattern on the sword was simple and unpretentious. Su Tong's hand touched it, and a faint light rippled from the sword. Suddenly, the surrounding temperature seemed to be blown by a warm wind, sweeping away the filthy atmosphere just now. Is this still the church's sacred weapon, Santia's spear and sword? Art stared at the sword blankly, swallowing hard, almost crying without tears. This is one of the church's most precious artifacts, second only to the Spear of Destiny. Su Tong's voice was very gentle, as if his hand was not a weapon, but a part of his body. Forget about your old almanac, it has a new name. What? Call it Chunyang. After saying that, the sword body trembled slightly, and the word Chunyang appeared on the side of the blade. This is the first update today. At the end of the plot, I will collect my thoughts. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 570. Oliver looked at the sword in Su Tong's hand. This sword made him feel dangerous, even more fearful than the damn spear. The pupils in Oliver's eyeballs were beating, the seal was lifted, and he just wanted to leave here right now. The oppression that the sword brought to him was too strong. But Oliver didn't leave, because he felt that there seemed to be another person up there. This person made him very afraid, and he remembered Su Tong's previous words. After Oliver hesitated for a moment, he decided to wait and see. At this time, Su Tong put the sword in his hand into the prop book. When the Pure Yang sword fell into the prop book, the silver ring in Su Tong's pupils tightened, and he saw that the prop book was wrapped in a faint golden light. Only high-level prop cards will have such features. It has light golden piping with exquisite cloud patterns. What's even more exaggerated is that this prop card is the same as source. It is not a static photo, but dynamic. There were misty clouds above, and the sword was hidden in the clouds, as if it was hanging on the white clouds in the sky. Compared with other prop cards, it simply doesn't have the same style of painting. Immediately afterwards, the entry of this prop card gradually appeared in front of Su Tong. Looking at the entry that appeared in front of him, he couldn't help but hold his breath. Pure Yang sword, soulbound item, cannot be traded, cannot be discarded. Once the world is enlightened, there will be no swordsman in the world. Restrain all dark creatures and deal critical damage to ghosts and ghosts. Passive skill 1, Pure Yang sword code. The user can use the power of the sword soul to understand the Chunyang sword code. Those who have learned the Pure Yang sword code will directly obtain the effect of the 3-level Pure Yang sword code. If it exceeds the 3-level effect, it will be increased by 1 additional level. Passive skill 2, thousands of swords are like firewood. All sword skills are increased by 1 level. Passive skill 3, pure yang furnace fire. The blade has its own pure yang fire. The heavier the yang energy in the user's body, the stronger the effect. Special skills, one sword can determine the world. After activation, a large amount of pure yang qi will be consumed. With its own pure yang qi, it will attract the power of heaven and earth, and the sword will emerge from the universe. This skill needs to be combined with the pure yang sword code and the right time and place to exert its maximum power. The user cannot use it if he does not have pure yang qi. Cooling time, 30 days. Note, this item is based on the artifact Saint Dia's Spear God Sword. It still retains some attributes of the Spear God Sword. The cooldown time of the sacred skills is reduced by 30%, all sacred skills are at 1, and it comes with the sacred sealing technique. Holy sealing technique. After consuming 30% of the script points, causing damage to dark creatures, a seal mark will be generated on the target. Once the mark reaches 10 levels, the target's soul will be forcibly sealed and enter a permanent sleep. If there are less than 10 layers, the script points will be consumed according to the number of layers X and the same amount of damage will be caused. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 2 days. Look at the entry given in the prop book. Even though Su Tong had already been mentally prepared, he couldn't help but feel excited in his heart. The entry attribute of the sword was worthy of the blessing of the golden item card. In addition to the extremely sharp blade, the skills it comes with are even more jaw-dropping. A real magic weapon. More importantly, when I used the Pure Yang Sword Soul as a guide to transform into a Pure Yang body, I also personally experienced the Pure Yang Sword code in the Pure Yang Sword Soul. It is better to say that it is a book of swords than a scripture. There are no moves and no tests. There are 3,000 words in the whole article, but there is not a single word about swords. But every stroke explains the secret of Chun Yang Kendo. Only a pure Yang body can truly feel the sword intention hidden in the sword canon. It's like this article is engraved in my mind. Even though there was no entry in the props book, he already had a basic understanding of the Chun Yang sword code. Rather than saying it is a sword manual, it is better to say it is a skill and a mental method. The first level allows a person to transform his qi into pure yang, turning his whole body into pure yang qi. The subsequent levels will be strengthened step by step until the 9th level, when he is completely transformed into a pure yang body. Even though I can only understand it superficially, with the blessing of this artifact, I still reached the 3rd level. This alone has blessed me to a terrifying degree. In other words, although he has not yet entered the Tao, he already has the strength to do so, and is even stronger. I'm afraid no one could have imagined that a boy who went astray could actually learn the highest classics of the Quanzhen section. That was a treasure that none of the Quanzhen sex masters in the past generations had been able to learn. This is not only because of the pure Yang sword soul and the power of Wuxiang, but also because of the luck that he has inexplicably added. He looked up at the top of his head. I saw luck surging above my head at this moment. In the sea of clouds, there were faint mountains. These mountains could not be seen to the end at a glance, like a big dragon lying in the sky and earth. Compared with his previous luck, it is completely different. It's like a brother who has been driving for a day and is already exhausted, but suddenly he is given a strong dose of medicine, and he stands tall again in an instant. Boom. At this moment, outside the cell, the incantation that was being recited in the middle of Qin's mouth suddenly stopped. Everyone raised their heads and watched a scarlet blood light rising from Amontes. The bloody light was like a sharp knife, tearing a huge crack in the sky of the other world. Through the cracks, it can be clearly seen that Amontes in reality has been shrouded in thick fog. The entire city began to loom, as if it would disappear at any moment. Damn. They haven't come up yet, we can't hold on anymore. Ian stood at the door, like a solid door, with holy light bursting out from the iron fists of his arms, punch after punch, tirelessly knocking away the demons that rushed towards him. But there were too many bullets. Dorsey looked at the bullets he carried and found that there were less than 10 bullets left. Compared with the black demon in front of him, these bullets were not enough to fill the gap between his teeth. Now they can only pray that Kevin and the captain come out of the dungeon as soon as possible. Maybe with the power of the artifact, they can break out from here. The influence of the evil god's sacrifice was more than just reality. At this moment, the cell began to tremble, and the surrounding holy rock began to crack and crack, revealing the dark stone core, and a steady stream of black liquid flowed out of the holy rock. The sacred rock is broken. Art couldn't help being shocked when he saw this, and instinctively looked at Oliver. "Little guy, I didn't do this." Oliver's eyes moved slightly, and just by glancing at Art felt as if his soul was about to be sucked away. He immediately turned around, not daring to look at Oliver again. "It's the evil god's sacrifice." Su Tong looked at the constantly decaying holy rocks around him, indicating that the sacrifice to the evil god was half successful at this moment. He wondered what Ntu and Zhao San were doing at this moment, and why the sacrifice to the evil god had not been interrupted. But at this rate, I'm afraid it won't be long before there won't be a single living person in a Mantasri. Hey, you still have time to escape now." Oliver rolled his eyes. His luck was not bad. Once the sacrifice to the evil god was completed, his power would be restored quickly. By that time, I would have nothing to worry about anymore. Unless the door to heaven opens again, nothing in this world can hurt you. Let's hurry over and meet Master Untu. Art hurriedly called Su Tong to leave as soon as possible. Although the spear divine sword had been destroyed, the divine sword in his hand seemed to be equally powerful. It was still too late for them to rush over now. "No, hurry over now, it's too late." Su Tong glanced at the time of the mission. It was less than half an hour until the end of the mission. It was already too late for him to rush over now. Even if he managed to get there, there would not be much time left for him to stop this evil god's sacrifice. Hearing this, Art suddenly panicked. Once the sacrifice to the evil god was completed, no one in Amontes would be able to survive. The second largest city in the empire would become a city of death overnight, and not even a mouse could survive. Besides, I am no longer the bishop of the church, right? Su Tong tilted his head and looked at Art with a half smile. What did you say?" Art's expression became serious, and he rushed to Su Tong and stared at him, but when he opened his mouth, he suddenly realized something. Kevin had been expelled from the church's clergy status by Evelyn. Logically speaking, he really had no obligation to prevent this disaster. Thinking of this, Art took a deep breath and gradually lowered his head. He couldn't help but feel a little desperate in his heart. "Then you go, leave now, the further away the better." As he said this, Art felt deeply disappointed and prepared to leave to meet Chin and the others. No matter what the final result was, he would not escape. That was his bounden duty. "Captain, where are you going?" At this time, Su Tong called out to him from behind, "Although I am no longer a bishop, it seems that you haven't expelled me from the team yet." Art was startled and turned to look at Su Tong's half-smiling face in confusion. "I saw Su Tong summoning the Pure Yang sword. People can't get over, but it's not impossible at all." After saying that, Su Tong was seen holding the hilt of the sword with both hands and bowed heavily in front of him. Kaka. Suddenly, a huge hole began to open in the ground before his eyes. The huge abyss tore the cell apart, revealing some ancient and dilapidated buildings standing on both sides of the abyss. Buzz. Under the abyss, as the door was opened, Oliver felt a familiar smell coming. That was the smell of death. a bare little foot walked lightly from the door and came to Su Tong's side. Both Art and Oliver looked at the woman who suddenly appeared next to Su Tong, their eyes full of curiosity. The difference is that there is more fear in Oliver's eyes. He realized that this woman was definitely not weaker than him. Hey! A body of pure yang. The eldest princess who walked to Su Tong stared directly at Su Tong, the greed in her eyes not concealed at all. If it weren't for an eyeball like a light bulb staring at him. I'm afraid that at this time, the eldest princess will not be able to help but pounce on Su Tong. No matter what, she will take a bite first. For you. Seeing that the eldest princess's face was close to his neck, Su Tong took out the command arrow and blocked it in front of the eldest princess, and then pointed the command arrow to the branch stuck on the ground in front of him. One thing, those who cross the line, kill. Got the order? Hearing this, the eldest princess grabbed the command arrow and then stood beside Su Tong. Confirming that everything was safe, Su Tong grasped the pure yang sword and jumped up. Let's go. As the voice fell, Su Tong-gren was still standing on the same spot, but a bright silvery light appeared on his forehead, and he jumped up from the abyss along with the pure yang sword. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 571. The soul left the body, wrapped in the pure yang sword, and rushed out of the cell instantly. Boom! The originally indestructible holy rock instantly fell apart under the fierce sword energy and a large hole was cut out. The brilliant silver light illuminated the sky for a moment, sweeping away the haze and fog in the world. What is that? Team Qin, who was already locked in a bitter battle, looked up at the silver light rising above their heads. Then the silver light swooped down from the sky, like a falling comet, bringing down little bits of light as rain. Careful! Dorsey yelled and fell to the ground, ignoring the fresh cow dung on the ground. But the expected impact did not happen. Instead, at the moment of falling, the silver light suddenly changed its direction and passed quickly over their heads. And he rushed into the sky above the demon in front of him, flying in and out quickly in a strange Z-shaped route. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As the silver light flashed, countless silver lights followed behind. Qin and others' eyes widened, and the next scene would become the most unforgettable scene in their lives. Gen gen gen. Suddenly, thousands of swords roared in unison, and the sword energy was like practicing. The dots of silver glow that followed spread out to form a dense rain of swords. These sword rains are like fireflies following behind the silver light. Wherever they pass, there are dots of silver light. Any demon that is penetrated by the sword energy will be turned into ashes by this pure yang energy in an instant. It wasn't until Yin Hui slowly paused in mid-air for a moment that Qin opened his eyes and saw clearly the true face of the silver light. Who is he? In the silver glow, there was a young man, covered in white clothes, holding a strange long sword in his hand. Looking at his appearance, Qin felt that he looked a bit like the rumored Oriental. This Oriental man is none other than Su Tong, but his soul is his original appearance. It turned out that Su Tong had already thought clearly that one of the tasks this time was to stop the evil ritual and the other was to kill Qiao Qian. These two tasks don't seem to conflict, but the task requires you to go to the Inquisition first and take away the spear sword. No matter whether you succeed or not, when you rush over, you will definitely not have enough time. Therefore, there is only one way to rush over as soon as possible, which is to leave the body. With the power of the soul, the distance of 1,000 miles is no more than an inch. After Su Tong transformed into a pure yang body, his soul became even more terrifyingly powerful. I have to say that it was a wise choice for me not to directly fuse Suanhua Divine Eye with Source. Once fused, although it can allow Yuan to derive new powerful abilities, such as the strange power of Life Ikemen, it may also cause him to lose the power of Suanhua Divine Eye. The pure yang sword she unleashed in one hand, with the blessing of the power of the soul, and the pure yang sword, is equivalent to add 3 levels in a row, and its lethality is astonishingly terrifying. If it hadn't been for the haste of taking action and not using the blessing of the star-eye tribulation, otherwise, the sword energy level would have been raised to the terrifying level 4, and its power would have been even more terrifying. Even so, the sword energy is like a god, like a dragnet. No matter it is the low-level demons below or the mid-level demons, everything falls apart in front of the pure yang sword energy. No wonder, in its heyday, the Quan Zhen sect was able to become the #1 Taoist leader and the leader in Taoism. Even Longhu Mountain, which had a profound foundation, had to avoid its edge. No wonder, when the drunkard killed the dragon with his sword, the old Taoist Sun Long, who had already entered the Tao, was so frightened that he broke out in cold sweat. Once the world is enlightened, there will be no swordsman in the world. At this moment, Su Tong couldn't help but deeply realize this Taoist's supreme happiness. The figure flew quickly, but in an instant, it disappeared in front of Qin and others. At this moment, the situation of Untu and Zhao San at the other end was not good. I saw that the huge altar in front of me was actually made of bones. In the center of the altar, there was a pillar of blood poured out of blood, and 7 souls were wrapped around it. Among them are the 2 housekeepers of the Morgan family, Mrs. Morgan, her good sister, and the souls of 3 men. These 3 people are the boss of the bullring, the abortion doctor Matthew, and the person who participated in the summoning ceremony of Aritia, the magician, and Aritia herself. These people did not become sacrifices for no reason. Each person's soul corresponds to an original sin. They represent, respectively, pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony and lust. In fact, the overeating category was originally assigned to Mr. Morgan, but since Su Tong arrived, Mr. Morgan began to restrain his usual habit of overeating in order to maintain his image. So Josie gave up Master Morgan and chose the big boss of the bullring. At this moment, the 7 souls were entangled with each other and howling. The more painful they were, the more dazzling the light of the blood column became, and the more terrifying the evil breath became. Josie wore a black sacrificial dress, her hands were painted with mysterious charms, and she recited evil magic spells. The whites of his eyes could no longer be seen, and they were completely black. And all this, both Zhao San and Untu could only watch helplessly, because there was an insurmountable mountain in front of them. That's Evelyn. I saw that Evelyn had already taken off her red robe at this moment. Who would have thought that underneath her usually loose clothes, there was a body as strong as an ox? What was even more surprising was that Evelyn's strength exceeded both of their expectations. As the 12 Cardinal Archbishop, Evelyn has never been known for her strength. When everyone mentions Evelyn, they will first think of his kind smile and his elegant conversation that makes people bathe in the spring breeze. But when the sheep shed their hair, people realized how terrifying this archbishop was. Stop insisting. The authority of the church over the years is no longer enough to deter the imperial power of the empire. Even a woman may become the next emperor of the empire. This is something the church will never tolerate. Now the empire needs the devil to reshuffle the cards. You should stand by my side, this is your last arc. Evelyn's voice was gentle, but her words no longer gave Untu and Zhao San an escape route. Haha, here we go again, isn't it the flood of Noah's Ark? You want to play the role of the God Lord, which is blasphemy to the God Lord. The two spoke sarcastically. In this regard, Evelyn's answer was simple. As he waved his hand, the ring on his finger that symbolized the authority of the Pope flashed with scorching light. Careful! I saw the holy light splitting the sky and the earth, destroying everything. It was so powerful that even Untu's holy light shield did not dare to block it. The two hurriedly avoided this terrifying holy light, and the Evelyns had already started to move. His figure is both real and illusory, vague and unclear, giving people the oriental feeling of unity between man and nature. Tao has no distinction between regions and factions. To a certain extent, both the East and the West will have a feeling that they lead to the same destination. Because the strong have the same consciousness. Evelyn had become a preacher since she was a child. With her extraordinary talent and the cultivation of her mentor, she had already entered Taoism at the age of 40, and it only took 10 years for her to become a Taoist. The speed is so fast that it is simply jaw-dropping. There are even rumors that if there are no accidents, he will be the next pope. Evelyn took the initiative to attack, walking with the speed of light, and appeared next to Zhao San in the blink of an eye. A holy light pierced from her palm, instantly turning the world in front of her into daylight, and she sang in harmony. You can even hear the songs of heaven singing at his fingertips. But for Zhao San, it was tantamount to the song of death. Seeing that he could not dodge, Zhao San inserted his hands into his chest. As the muscles behind him squirmed, the huge black turtle was summoned by him again. Useless. Evelyn looked at the giant turtle in front of her, crushing it, and instead showed a sneer. In his eyes, this was just a trick, and it was completely vulnerable in the face of absolute power. Boom! As the holy light fell, the black turtle flew out in the holy light. Countless holy lights turned into light rain and rained down. Even the high-level demons could not break through the defense, but they could not hold on for even 3 seconds. Seeing blood spurting out of Zhao San's mouth, the black turtle was cut into countless pieces by the holy light in an instant. Evelyn, this way. Seeing that Zhao San was in danger, Unto let out an angry roar, his whole body was filled with golden holy light, and he rushed towards Evelyn like lightning. Judgment, the sword of great sanction. As the words fell, a giant sword from the sky tore through the clouds and slashed at Evelyn. The huge sword blade seemed to open up the world. Even the other world could not bear such power. Many black cracks were torn out and could not be healed for a long time. Stupid! You should have been the most promising judge, but now, you have disobeyed the church's orders. Seeing the big sword slash down, Evelyn's expression had to become serious. Sanctions are just the power given to you by the Lord God, but the Lord God can also take it back. Hand of God. Evelyn raised her palms, and her body shone with a majestic and inviolable sacred aura. It was the way of the gods and his way. As soon as his palm met the Tao, the hand seemed to disappear in the holy light. At the same time, the lead clouds in the sky fell and became gloomy, revealing a big snow-white and crystal-clear hand. It was as terrifying and boundless as the vast sea, tearing open the sky. At this moment, Evelyn no longer retained her strength. He had given the two of them too many opportunities, but they did not appreciate it. Even if they took out the name of the Pope, they still did not change their mind to disobey the Church. Such people are ultimately abandoned by the Church. Just like Kevin, the blood debt of a Montez will always be borne by sinners like them. Snapped. The hand of God slapped on the divine sword. The divine sword shattered instantly and turned into powder and disappeared into the air. Unto's face turned pale instantly. It was obvious that being forced to crack the skill in this way must have suffered an irreversible price. But just when he thought he was going to die. But I heard a burst of loud laughter from the sky. So this is the hand of God, what a coincidence, my hand is also the hand of God, come and try it. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 572. He. In the dungeon, Art looked at the motionless Su Tong, and then at the hole cut above the dungeon. For a moment, he didn't know whether he should ask, what on earth is Bishop Kevin doing? But for a moment, he didn't know how to speak. He wanted to step forward, but was persuaded to retreat by the indifferent eyes of the eldest princess on the side. Oliver naturally understood that Su Tong had already left his body at this moment. This is the best opportunity to kill him. As long as the physical body is destroyed, the soul is rootless duckweed, just like those ancient gods. Although they have many clones, they have only one godhead. Once their clones are destroyed, even the powerful godhead has to be forced to disappear temporarily. This is true even for gods, let alone mortals. However, Oliver did not dare to mess around. All fear comes from the unknown, and all the unknown comes from the woman standing next to Su Tong. Long black hair, black eyes. Although she looked beautiful, Oliver smelled the smell of death from her body. There is no doubt that this woman is very powerful. If he were at his peak, he might be able to easily control her, but with his current strength, it seems very risky. Oliver was still confused. But he was not anxious at all. After all, he could leave at any time now, but, his eyes slowly stared at Su Tong's body, a body of pure yang, if he could swallow his flesh and blood. Just when Oliver was wondering whether he should go or stay. Da-da-da. A sound of footsteps echoed in the dungeon. Oliver's eyes slowly moved as he watched a woman walking down the steps. It's a little deviated from the plan, but I still have to clean it up in the end. Thalia twirled her hair with her fingers. Her naturally charming appearance made the eldest princess and Oliver feel like enemies. Neither of them could see the depth of Thalia's strength. The time around this woman seemed to follow her steps, becoming sluggish and out of touch. So much so that Art on the side is still looking up. Hey, it's such a pity. If he can become a certified player, maybe he will have a chance in the future. Thalia looked at Su Tong's body. With his pure yang body and the prop cards in his hand, it was rare to see such a player who could master such power before promotion and certification. Once the certification is completed, it will be difficult to kill the dragon from the front beach. Thinking of this, Thalia seemed to understand why Ame always helped this little guy. It's a pity that he shouldn't have gotten that prop card. The common man was not guilty of harboring the treasure. When he first mentioned it to him, he was able to give up the item card decisively. Perhaps he has successfully become one of the certified players now. Stop. When Thalia was about to step over the branch, the eldest princess stood in front of Su Tong. But Thalia ignored it and even broke the branch on the ground with one kick. Even though she knew the origin of that branch, she was not afraid at all, even in her eyes, whether it was a princess or an old man behind the gate. Even if the old man behind him comes out in person, there is no threat to him. Seeing this, the eldest princess's face turned slightly cold, her black hair was flying, each one was very crystal clear, and the brilliance in her eyes was even more dazzling, and the billowing black water surged toward Thalia in front of her. Enter the Tao, become the Tao, cut the Tao, and merge with the Tao. Even if the fate of the Zhu family falls into your hands, how far can you go? Thalia sighed. As a woman, she could understand the difficulty of a woman trying to break free from the shackles of fate. But this does not mean that she will let go, because if Su Tong does not die, she will not be able to get back what the shop wants. What awaits her is torture that is worse than death. Thalia opened her hand, and an item card appeared in her palm. I saw the prop card slowly squirming and turning into a strange mouth. Different from the ordinary rice bucket, this one was filled with strange light and splendor. The body of the bucket trembled slightly, and immediately a strange rainbow light emitted before his eyes. Boom! When the rainbow light and the black water collided, a large area of the black water was evaporated and disappeared in an instant. Not even a drop touched Thalia's body. Seeing this, the eldest princess tensed up slightly, formed a seal with her hands, and a dead tree appeared behind her. A tree, 2 fruits, and a hanging rope. These 3 items seemed inconspicuous, but they made Oliver feel frightened, as if he had a sense of impending disaster. The fate of a defeated country, the spirit of national subjugation. The strange rope trembled slightly, exuding a strange and unknown aura on this crooked old tree. In an instant, the aura of the eldest princess also began to change, her eyes were like an abyss, and the black water around her began to boil. For a moment, Thalia felt something strange on her body. Her luck was fading rapidly, and nursery rhymes began to ring in her ears. Thieves flow, and the upper world sends him to behead people. If there is one person who cannot be killed, the plague messenger will be behind. Every year is A, B, B, and the blood is red here. There are houses with no one to live in, and there is no one to cultivate the land. The people above are full, but the people below are without food. Officials are panicking because they have no money. Soldiers are without armor and cannons are in their warehouses. No one in the zoo family is busy, and the people are like gray dogs from now on. Once the Daming Gate was breached, there was a lot of white money hidden in the ground, the warehouses were full of golden millet, but not a single grain was used as food for the army, and there was only a crooked tree in Myshan, and the emperor of the Zhou family perished here. The more I listen to the children's songs, the sadder they become. The rich and prosperous Ming dynasty once had thousands of kingdoms come to the court, and it used to collect tens of millions of tax dollars a year. But in the end, the court couldn't even get out a single grain of silver, and it watched helplessly as the Ming dynasty was completely ruined. Along with the sound of children's songs, Thalia suddenly found that her throat was tight, as if something had grasped her throat invisibly. And tightening it tighter and tighter, a huge forbidden city appeared in front of his eyes, which was being reduced to ashes in the fire. I don't know why, but I feel an unspeakable sadness in my heart. Even Oliver, who was far away, was frightened by this aura. He shrank into a ball with all his strength, trying to protect himself, for fear of being contaminated by this ominous aura of defeat. Thalia's eyes gradually darkened, and an old crooked tree appeared behind her, with a hanging rope around her throat. In an instant, she seemed to be a subjugated king, watching her country step by step. Heading towards destruction, all thoughts are lost for a moment, and I just want to end this nightmare as soon as possible. Boom. Sudden. A bolt of black lightning pierced the sky, and the lightning struck down hard, shattering the shadow of the crooked-necked tree behind Thalia. Cough, cough, cough. She rubbed her neck, coughed a few times, raised her head and sneered with regret. It was so close, I was about to fall into your trap. The power of death surged and turned into a long dragon of death at the eldest princess's fingertips, and all things were destroyed. It's a pity, it's a little worse. Thalia secretly sighed at this. Being able to reach this point may not be the eldest princess's limit, but her potential will stop here. As Thalia spoke, a fluorescent light flashed in front of her eyebrows, like an immortal monument, suppressing her own luck. Then she stood up, and the bucket in her hand burst out with thousands of rainbow lights. With just one sweep, she was freed from this aura of defeat. She slapped it down with her backhand, and black lightning rumbled in her palm, like the roar of the avenue, and a huge aura of destruction covered the eldest princess. Puff. In an instant, the black water dried up and everything disappeared. The eldest princess's face became even paler for a moment, blood overflowed from her mouth, and even the crooked neck leaf behind her cracked. Let's go, I don't want to kill you. Thalia issued a final ultimatum, hoping that the eldest princess would let go. After all, she still has potential. If she can become enlightened, maybe she will be a little more cautious. After all, there is an upper limit to the power she can exert in this script world. If you exceed this limit, you will be forcibly kicked out of this script world. Even the boss, as the host, cannot change this rule. But the eldest princess did not become enlightened. After all, reincarnation from the dead is an act that defies nature, and it can't just be done by luck. The eldest princess wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, looked back at Sutong, and waved the command arrow in her hand helplessly, with the command in my body, if I die, then it's probably my fate. As the eldest princess took a deep breath, the old crooked tree behind her swayed slightly, and suddenly a huge aura gradually began to surge out of her body. For a moment, the two Dao fruits trembled slightly, and they actually began to open and sprout flower buds. In the door behind him, at some unknown time, Laudeo and Shuigui both stood there and watched silently. Seeing this, the old Taoist couldn't help but sigh. This girl. This is to prepare for forced enlightenment. Although she has the strength, she is doomed to fail without the opportunity. This girl just wants to use the moment of forced enlightenment to increase her power to the extreme. Just the consequences of doing this. The old Taoist looked at Shuigui aside. But Shuigui remained expressionless. He neither ordered the old man to take action nor had any intention of taking action himself. The veteran knows in his heart that it's not that they don't take action, but that they can't take action. Because this is the fate of the eldest princess herself. If she can't make it, it's her fate. Bang bang. The two Dao fruits gradually opened their flower buds, and the old crooked neck tree was shaking, and the Zhu family's luck surged crazily from the tree. For a moment, every treetop was emitting dazzling fluorescence. Under the fluorescence, a fruit was slowly growing on the treetop. But compared to the other two fruits, this fruit is obviously stunted. If it weren't for the old crooked neck tree, which acts as a rhizome and continuously supplies energy to it, I'm afraid this fruit would probably die midway. Forget it. There are so many geniuses, even if I want to destroy you, you will not be missing. Seeing that the eldest princess's third Dao fruit was about to bloom, Thalia did not intend to wait any longer, as the time was almost up. As he said this, he saw the bucket in Thalia's hand turning slowly, and a strange light flashed up, heading towards the eldest princess. If you don't break, you won't stand, let's fight. Seeing the flying rainbow light, a cold light flashed in the eyes of the eldest princess. She has been practicing for 100 years just for this life. The way of nirvana, extreme night. Black mists surged, and the breath of death was overwhelming. The eldest princess turned into a black dragon and rose up. She used a branch as a sword and collided with the rainbow light. Boom! The haze tore open, and a white light seemed to tear the sky apart. On the other side, a loud laughter fell, followed by a big hand protruding from the clouds. The palm was as big as a mountain covering the sky. Evelyn's expression changed drastically. He was an enlightened person, and like Druid Lay, he was for the unity of heaven and man. But the power of the big hand covering the sky in front of him was even more terrifying. Who is this? Is there still an enlightened person hiding in a monastery? Su Tong was of course not enlightened, but his strength as a great master was far from that of an enlightened person like Evelyn. But it will be different after it is transformed into a pure yang body, a true pure yang body. You must know that even the drunkard in the last script world has the power of nature, and his pure yang energy is like a vast ocean. But he is not a pure yang body. Su Tong used the power of formlessness to transform the dark body into a pure yang body, and the increase he received was terrifying. With the blessing of the pure yang sword, he had only scratched the surface of the pure yang sword cannon, but with the blessing of the pure yang sword, he reached the third level. Until the soul's blessing came out of the body, his strength was already comparable to that of a great master. Although Su Tong is not enlightened, he can still explode with power that even those who have become enlightened do not dare to underestimate. Hand of God. Evelyn, waving her arms, faced the hand of God and prepared to resist. At this time, he had no way to retreat, and the evil god's ritual had reached a critical moment. If he retreated at this time, all previous efforts would be wasted. Boom! For a moment, two big hands collided, causing the surroundings to shake, and the entire world was turned upside down. Immediately afterwards, the pure yang qi suddenly dispersed, and gradually collapsed under the twisting of God's hand. Ha ha ha, that's all. Seeing this, Evelyn smiled, but she didn't expect that the other party was just an empty show, and her real strength was far inferior to her own. But while she was smiling, Evelyn couldn't laugh anymore. I saw the dispersed pure yang qi flowing in mid-air, and then falling like a rain of light, gradually tearing apart the hand of God. Only then did Evelyn see clearly that the big hand was not a real magic, but was made of thousands of sword energies gathered together. Not much, just 4,000 swords and 300 swords. The sword moves in all directions. It consumes 5 script points. After activation, strong sword energy will burst out and kill the target. Cooling time, 1 second. Consecutive use doubles the cost. This is the active skill of sword weapon. With the prop points in Su Tong's hand, it would have been impossible to activate so much sword energy. However, the sword skills of Pure Yang Sword are at 1, the binding skills of Star Eye Tribulation are at 1, the soul out of body light skills are at 2, and the fetter effect brought by the series of fetters of his own title, the retrograde, all skills are at 1. With the blessing of terror, the skill of moving the sword in all directions was forcibly upgraded to level 5 of terror. Sword moves everywhere, LV5, temporary. It consumes 1 script point. After activation, strong sword energy will burst out and slash the target. You can consume a large amount of script points at one time to release multiple sword chi on the target. Each time the sword chi is released exceeds 1000, you will have an additional chance of getting one free release. The number of free sword chi released is random. Cooling time, none. Su Tong activated the skill 3 times, each time costing 1000 script points, which was a complete waste of money. However, he was lucky enough to release it 3 times for free, adding 500 sword energy twice and 300 sword energy once. A total of 4,300 swords. This terrifying amount is simply terrifying and inhuman. It can be called firepower coverage, but of course the price is also 3,000 script points. You must know that the number of 3,000 script points is enough to arm a new player to the teeth, and at least make up a complete set of prop cards. And this is just a wave of Su Tong's skills. Thanks to the gift from Captain Untu, otherwise the meager script points Su Tong had would be too much to release even once. In the blink of an eye, the hand of God was gone. Looking at the silver light falling all over the sky, Evelyn's face was ashen, and a scroll appeared in his hand. The scroll was torn open, and his surroundings were illuminated in an instant, and a golden feather appeared in the scroll. It was the feather of Raguel, one of the 7 archangels. It is also one of the few remaining artifacts of the Church. Evelyn's final trump card. The divine way is immortal, but the Lord is eternal. The golden feather was ignited and turned into a golden holy fire that enveloped Evelyn's body. Facing the endless rain of swords, the holy fire burst out with powerful holy light and dispersed all the sword energy. With the golden feather as the core, the holy fire is lit. Unless they are members of the Holy Church, no one can harm themselves. Just as Evelyn was feeling relieved, she suddenly heard a sneer in her ears, "We are both holy lights, you are not the only one." Evelyn was startled and saw that Anchuren had already rushed in front of him. But Untu's target was not Evelyn, but the feather. He reached out and grabbed the feather like lightning, not caring that the holy fire ignited by the feather would burn his body. "Don't even think about it." Evelyn's murderous aura surged, and a ray of holy light condensed on her fingertips, poking at Untu's eyebrows. Ah! For a moment, blood flowed like a fountain, and half of Untu's face was torn apart by the holy light, but Evelyn's hand involuntarily froze in mid-air. He squinted his eyes and looked to his side. I saw Zhao San standing in the distance. He had a strange shape at the moment, with one foot independent and the other leg crossed on his abdomen. The moon was on his left hand and the sun on his right hand. Reciting strange incantations. Prayer, Forbidden Chapter, White Tiger Festival. The veins on Zhao San's forehead squirmed, intertwining with the mark of a copper coin, and his whole person became confused. He slowly opened his mouth, revealing beast-like fangs, and the energy behind him turned into a white tiger. It is often said in the world that plum blossoms emerge from the opposite side of the world. It means that most of the eccentric magic in the world started to spread from my Hua village and became popular. But the history of my Hua Zhuang is actually not long. It started with my Hua Taoist, and it was not until the early Qing dynasty that it truly flourished. But before that, the side magic was no more than three: prayer, tiredness, and blessing. The three can be called the pinnacle of magic. The three schools of magic are all different. Each school has its own unique philosophy and inheritance. Maybe Tao can lead to the same goal through different paths, but the magic is ever changing. The only thing that remains unchanged is that the purpose of these magic is to kill people. Technique. A white tiger appeared behind Zhao San, opened its mouth and bit his left arm. Suddenly, Zhao San's left hand withered visibly to the naked eye. My hand. At this time, Evelyn was surprised to find that her arm had withered along with it. Even if he covered his arm with holy light, he still could not stop it from continuing to wither. Evelyn looked back at Zhao San in shock, and only then did he notice that there was a piece of hair in Zhao San's mouth. When? In an instant, a picture flashed through Evelyn's mind. When she approached Zhao San, this guy grabbed a piece of her hair while calling the black turtle. Seeing the white tiger behind Zhao San begin to bite Zhao San's other arm. Bitch. Evelyn immediately didn't care to stop onto. Holy sword. The golden holy sword appeared in Evelyn's palm, with lines of Tao and reason flashing on it, and the sword pointed at Zhao San. The sharp murderous aura suddenly caused Zhao San's clothes to tear apart. But Evelyn forgot that his opponent was not just Zhao San. The moment Untu snatched away the golden feather, he saw a rumble of sword rain dispersed in front of him, and a figure emerged from the sword rain. Not good. Evelyn hurriedly grasped the holy sword and turned around to block, but it was too late. A white robe flashed in the sword rain, the sword rose, the air froze, and before his eyes were layers of sword shadows. Boom. As the pure yang sword passed in front of her, Evelyn's pupils couldn't help but tighten, and she stared at this unfamiliar face. Who on earth are you? The word who is still coming out of my mouth. The holy sword in Evelyn's hand broke into two pieces with a click. His vision also spun around, until he saw his headless body falling straight to the ground, and the unwillingness in his eyes gradually extinguished. After killing Evelyn with one sword, Su Tong did not hesitate at all, and in an instant, he rushed towards Qiao Qian on the altar. Roar! Black ghosts surged around the altar, but before they could even touch Su Tong's body, they were shattered by the terrifying pure yang energy. The distance is more than 10 meters, but in the blink of an eye. Feeling the hot breath coming from behind, Qiao Qian's eyes suddenly regained clarity. She didn't dodge because it was too late. The blazing sword light in front of her made her feel the aura of destruction. It was as if he had a natural restraint on her. For a moment, Qiao turned around numbly and looked at the sword blade thrust in front of her. She just opened her eyes wide to see the face of the person coming. However, the stabbing blade quietly disappeared at this moment. There was only an afterimage that gradually disappeared in the air, slowly approaching Josie's face, and a familiar call, "Josie. It's over, go home." A ray of cool breeze blew by, and the afterimage gradually disappeared. Qiao stared blankly at the empty ruins in front of her for a few seconds, not even knowing what happened. Why did the sword that stabbed him suddenly disappear? Who was that figure just now? These doubts flashed through her mind, but Josie felt they were not important at all. Instead, the voice calling her home always lingered in her mind. Go home. After glancing behind her, when she saw Evelyn's body and head separated on the ground, Josie's hazy eyes suddenly lit up, and she flew towards home without caring about the altar that had reached the critical moment. Rumble, rumble. Terrible lightning falls, these black thunder and lightning, every time it falls, it is like a huge force. Thalia had already decided to kill him, and naturally he would not show any mercy. Countless black thunder and lightning came down densely. Polar night. Under the lightning, a deep dark aura burst out from the eldest princess. She was on the verge of enlightenment, and the rich death aura had reached its extreme, forming a terrifying black hole that swallowed up all the black lightning. But if you look closely, you can see that her body is gradually cracking apart at an alarming speed. If enlightenment fails, the body dies and the path disappears. She has no way out. Maybe before Thalia kills her, she will be counterattacked by the power of the polar night. I can't hold it anymore. The old Taoist sighed. Without an opportunity, the eldest princess forced herself to become Taoist. The moment she became Taoist was also the moment her body died and Taoism disappeared. This means that if you hear the truth in the morning, you will die in the evening. The aura of darkness was getting thicker and thicker, and when the eldest princess's body was gradually being swallowed up by the darkness pouring out of her, a ray of silver light suddenly pierced out from behind the eldest princess. Puff! The pure yang sword pierced through the eldest princess's chest, but the hot pure yang aura instantly poured into the eldest princess's body. The eldest princess' blurred vision gradually became clearer, and Su Tong's voice came to her ears, "What are you still doing? If you can't do it now, then when will it be better?" Thalia looked at Su Tong, who slowly opened his eyes with wide eyes, and couldn't help but scream, "You are crazy." "Hey, you're right, you can't have your cake and eat it too, so I'll choose the best one." The corners of Su Tong's mouth gradually raised. He looked towards the corner next to him. In his sight, a suspended eyeball was stopping in the corner. Void Demonic Eye. That was a prop card given to him by Untu when he joined the team. He can place an eye hidden in nothingness anywhere to watch all the movements around him. Lasts 3 hours and has no distance restrictions. However, it can only be used 3 times. How could Su Tong be so relieved that his soul was out of body? He was always paying attention to the movements here. Maybe he can kill Josie to complete the promotion task. But the eldest princess couldn't wait for that time. After weighing the promotion task and the eldest princess for a second, Su Tong made a decision. Since you can't have your cake and eat it too, then take the best for yourself. As the pure yang energy poured into the eldest princess's body, in an instant, a little bit of white light gradually appeared in the black hole that was about to swallow the eldest princess. The white light became stronger and stronger until it was equal to the darkness. One black and one white entangled and rotated, forming a pair of yin and yang fish. Rumble! A crack opened in the sky, filling the sky above Amontes. Amontes, which had gradually overlapped with the other world, suddenly became clear with this thunder, as if a force directly swept away the haze shrouding Amontes. The yin-yang fish spins rapidly. The eldest princess's body suddenly surged with power, knocking Su Tong away. Not good. Seeing that the eldest princess was about to become enlightened, Thalia's pupils shrank and she leaped down. A spear made of black lightning flew out of her hand and stabbed Su Tong himself. Boom! The black electric current flashed sharply and went straight to Su Tong's chest, but at this time, a hand silently grabbed the thunder spear. I saw slender bare hands exuding white brilliance, and a woman emerged from the black and white yin and yang fish, standing in front of Su Tong, with long hair and phoenix eyes like blazing red fire. Wearing a phoenix robe, his whole body exudes immortal fire.